The gun was already pointed at his chest when Lena realized she was standing in a room full of killers. 3 weeks ago, she'd been serving soup to rude customers for minimum wage. Now she wore diamonds worth more than her entire life, stood beside the most dangerous billionaire in New York, and was about to claim an inheritance drenched in blood. The man holding the gun was Damien's missing brother, the boy he'd searched for 15 years. But Nico's eyes held nothing except hatred. One wrong word, and everyone in this ballroom would die. If you want to see how a shy waitress became the most feared woman in the underworld, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The thing about working at Luminesca was that you learned to become invisible. Lena Hart had perfected the art over 3 years of serving Manhattan's elite, the hedge fund managers who snapped their fingers like she was a dog, the socialites who complained about 20-degree wine temperatures, the celebrities who acted like eye contact might give them a disease. She'd learned to move through the dining room like smoke, refilling water glasses before anyone noticed they were empty, clearing plates without making a sound, existing in the spaces between their conversations without ever really being seen. That's what made her good at the job. That's also what made her poor. "Table 7 needs another bottle of the Screaming Eagle," Marco hissed at her as she passed through the kitchen doors. "And they're pissed you took more than 30 seconds. Lena grabbed the bottle, worth more than her monthly rent, and headed back into the dining room. Her feet ached. Her lower back felt like someone had taken a hammer to her spine. She'd been on shift for 11 hours with one bathroom break, and there were still 4 tables that would probably stay until midnight, running her ragged for the privilege of maybe leaving a 10% tip. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it. Had to be her sister Maya again, probably asking about money for textbooks or groceries or whatever crisis had erupted this week. Lena sent most of her paycheck home to Boston, where Maya was trying to finish community college while working part-time at a pharmacy. Their parents had died in a car accident 6 years ago, leaving Lena to raise a teenager on waitress wages and tips that barely covered MetroCards and instant ramen. The glamorous life. She approached table 7 with her best invisible smile, the one that said, "I'm here to serve you, but please don't actually perceive me as a human being," and started to pour the wine. "Finally," one of the men muttered. He didn't look up from his phone. Lena's hand stayed steady even though she wanted to dump the entire bottle over his $1,000 haircut. She finished pouring, set the bottle down, and turned to leave. That's when she noticed him. Corner table. Alone. Dressed in black like he was attending a funeral, expensive funeral, tailored suit that probably cost more than a used car, but still. He sat completely motionless, staring at nothing, his face carved from marble and just as warm. The other servers had been avoiding that section all night like it was radioactive. "Who's that?" Lena whispered to Marco when she passed him near the bar. Marco's face went pale. "You don't know? Should I?" "That's Damien Morelli." Marco said the name like it was a curse. "Worth about $4 billion, maybe more. Owns half the shipping routes in the Atlantic. His company moves everything, cars, electronics, probably weapons for all anyone knows. Word is he destroyed a competitor last year over a contract dispute. The guy's business went bankrupt in 3 months." Lena glanced back at the corner table. Damien Morelli hadn't moved, hadn't touched his water, hadn't even blinked as far as she could tell. "He comes in once a month," Marco continued, wiping down glasses with shaking hands. "Orders the most expensive thing on the menu, sits there for exactly 2 hours, doesn't eat a bite, leaves a $1,000 tip, and walks out. Nobody talks to him. Nobody asks if he needs anything. We just leave him alone." "That's weird. That's rich people." Marco shook his head. "Just stay away from that table." "Serious. Last month, Andrea went over to ask if he wanted dessert, and he stared at her until she literally started crying. Didn't say a word, just looked at her. She quit the next day." Lena should have listened. She really should have. But her phone buzzed again. Maya. Definitely Maya. And when she checked it during her next trip to the kitchen, her stomach dropped through the floor. "Landlord says if we don't pay by Friday, he's evicting us. I'm so sorry. I know you already sent money this month, but the electric bill was higher than we thought, and I had to buy insulin, and I'm so sorry." $3,000. They needed $3,000 by Friday, or Maya would be homeless with nowhere to store the insulin that kept her alive. Lena leaned against the wall and tried to breathe. Her savings account had maybe $800. Her credit cards were maxed. She'd already picked up every extra shift Luminesca would give her. She looked back out at the dining room, at Damien Morelli sitting alone in the corner like a statue, surrounded by untouched food that cost more than Maya's rent. The man left $1,000 tips for nothing. What would he pay for something? It was stupid, reckless, exactly the kind of impulsive decision that had gotten her into trouble her whole life. But Maya's message kept burning in her mind, the insulin, and Lena was moving before she could talk herself out of it. She walked straight to the corner table. Damien Morelli didn't acknowledge her approach. Up close, he looked even more intimidating. Sharp jawline, dark hair going gray at the temples, eyes the color of frozen steel. There was something profoundly wrong about him, like looking at a person-shaped hole in the universe. No warmth, no life, just cold, elegant emptiness. Lena cleared her throat. Nothing. Excuse me, Mr. Morelli? His eyes moved. That was it. Just his eyes, shifting from the middle distance to her face, and Lena suddenly understood why Andrea had started crying. There was something predatory in that gaze, something that evaluated her worth in half a second and found her severely lacking. She almost ran, but then she thought about Maya sleeping in a cardboard box, about insulin vials going warm and useless, about everything she'd sacrificed for 3 years in this city just to keep her baby sister alive. "I need money," Lena blurted out. Damien's expression didn't change, didn't even flicker. "I'm sorry, that came out wrong." Her voice was shaking. I have a sister. She's diabetic. We're about to be evicted. And I know this is crazy, but you leave $1,000 tips for nothing, and I just thought maybe if I could do something for you, translate something or organize something or, I don't know, anything, maybe you could leave. His voice was quiet, rough, like he didn't use it often. "Please, I just need leave now." It wasn't a threat, it was a statement of fact, delivered in the same tone someone might use to comment on the weather. But there was something underneath it, something that made every survival instinct in Lena's body scream at her to run. She backed away from the table. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." She made it 3 steps before her grandmother's voice echoed in her head. The Sicilian lullaby Nonna used to sing when Lena couldn't sleep, the one about the mountains and the sea and coming home. Nonna had been so proud of her heritage, had taught Lena phrases and songs even though nobody spoke the old dialect anymore. Lena didn't know why she said it. Maybe because she was already humiliated and had nothing left to lose. Maybe because some part of her brain was short-circuiting from stress and exhaustion. Maybe because the universe has a sick sense of humor. But she turned back and whispered the first line of Nonna's lullaby in Sicilian, the real Sicilian, not the Italian that tourists learned, but the ancient dialect that barely existed anymore. Ku nesci sulu, nesci sempre sulu. He who leaves alone, always leaves alone. The reaction was immediate and terrifying. Damien Morelli stood up so fast his chair crashed backward. His face had gone completely white. He stared at Lena like she'd just driven a knife into his chest, his mouth open, his eyes wide with something that looked like shock or horror or recognition. "What did you just say?" His voice came out strangled. Lena's heart was hammering. It's just a song my grandmother—" "Say it again." It wasn't a request. Lena repeated the phrase, her voice barely audible. Damien moved around the table so fast she flinched. He was close now, too close, invading her space with an intensity that made her want to disappear into the floor. His eyes raked over her face, her hair, her uniform, before dropping to her neck, to the silver locket hanging there. Her grandmother's locket. The only thing Lena had left from Nonna besides memories and old songs. "Where did you get that?" Damien's hand shot out and Lena jerked back, but he wasn't reaching for her. He was pointing at the locket, his fingers shaking. "Where the hell did you get that?" "My grandmother gave it to me before she died. It's just a—" "Open it." "What?" "Open the locket. Now." Lena's hands fumbled with the clasp. She'd never actually opened it. The thing had been soldered shut for as long as she could remember. Just a simple silver oval she wore because it reminded her of Nonna's perfume and Sunday dinners and being 5 years old without a care in the world. But when she tried to open it now, her thumbnail found a tiny catch she'd never noticed before. The locket popped open in her palm. Inside was a piece of paper folded so small it was practically microscopic. And underneath that, Engraved in the silver itself was a symbol, a ship's wheel wrapped in thorns. Damien made a sound like he'd been punched. "That's not possible," he whispered. He looked at Lena like she was a ghost. "That symbol hasn't been used in 30 years. The only person who had that—" He didn't finish the sentence. Instead, he pulled out his phone and made a call, his eyes never leaving Lena's face. "Alberto, clear the restaurant. Everyone out. Now." A pause. "I don't care if they haven't finished their meals. Refund everything. Pay them double. I want this place empty in 5 minutes." He hung up. Lena's brain was screaming at her to run, but her feet wouldn't move. Around them, she could hear confused voices rising, protests from customers being ushered toward the door, Marco's panicked explanations. Within minutes, the dining room was empty except for her and Damien Morelli, and the terrible silence stretching between them. "Sit down," Damien said. "I should go." "Sit. Down." Lena sat. Damien remained standing, pacing now, his hand running through his hair over and over like he was trying to physically hold his thoughts together. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. 15 years ago, my younger brother disappeared. Nico. He was 12 years old. We were at our grandfather's estate in Sicily when men broke in. Armed men. Professional kidnappers. They killed 3 of our guards and took Nico. We searched for years, spent millions, followed every lead from Rome to Rio to Hong Kong. Never found a trace. He stopped pacing and looked at Lena. The night before Nico disappeared, our mother gave him a locket, silver, with that exact symbol inside. She told him it was a family heirloom, that it would protect him. She sang him a lullaby in Sicilian, the old dialect, not the modern Italian garbage, the song you just sang. Lena's mouth went dry. "That's not possible. My grandmother—" What was her name? Maria Romano. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Romano," Damien repeated slowly. "Your grandmother's maiden name was Romano." It wasn't a question, but Lena nodded anyway. Damien laughed, but there was nothing funny about the sound. It was bitter and sharp and full of something that might have been rage or grief or both. "The Romano family," he said quietly, "has been at war with my family for 3 generations. They control organized crime from Naples to New York. Drugs, weapons, human trafficking, you name it, they profit from it. They're the reason my brother disappeared, the reason my mother died of a broken heart 2 years later, the reason I've spent 15 years turning myself into someone cold enough to burn their entire empire to the ground." He leaned down, his hands on the table, his face inches from Lena's. "So I'm going to ask you one more time, and I suggest you think very carefully about your answer. Where did you really get that locket?" "From my grandmother." Lena's voice came out steadier than she felt. "She raised me and my sister after our parents died. She was a sweet old lady who made pasta and grew tomatoes and sang old songs. That's it. I don't know anything about crime families or wars or your brother." "Your grandmother was Maria Romano." "Yes." "And your mother?" "Anna Hart. She died 6 years ago with my dad in a car accident." Damien pulled out his phone again and typed something. His face went even paler than before. "Anna Romano," he read from his screen. "Disappeared from New York at age 19. Family reported her missing, but no body was ever found. The Romanos claimed she'd been killed by—" He stopped, looked at Lena. "By my family. They used her death as justification for escalating the war." "That's insane. My mom wasn't involved in any—" "Your mother faked her death to escape." Damien's voice was flat, stating facts. "Changed her name to Anna Hart. Married some nobody, had 2 kids, lived a quiet life in Boston. And when she died, your grandmother gave you the one piece of evidence that could prove your bloodline." He straightened up and made another call. "Bring the car around. We're leaving." A pause. "No, not the apartment. Take us to the estate. Call my grandfather and tell him we're coming. Tell him I found something impossible." He hung up and looked at Lena. "Stand up." "I'm not going anywhere with you." "Yes, you are. Because in about 10 minutes, every Romano soldier in New York is going to know that Maria Romano's granddaughter just surfaced carrying a family heirloom that was supposed to be destroyed decades ago. They're going to come for you, and when they do, they won't ask polite questions." "You're trying to scare me." "I'm trying to keep you alive." Damien grabbed her arm, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough that she couldn't pull away. You stumbled into the middle of a war you don't understand. That locket around your neck is a claim to power within the Romano family. It means you're a direct bloodline heir, and if they think you might use that claim against them, they will kill you before sunrise." Lena's head was spinning. "This is crazy. I'm a waitress. I don't want anything to do with—" "What you want stopped mattering the second you spoke Sicilian and showed me that symbol. Now move." He pulled her toward the door. Lena tried to resist, tried to think of a way out, but her brain was white noise and static. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. She was supposed to finish her shift, go home to her terrible apartment, send money to Maya, and keep surviving like she'd been doing for 6 years. She wasn't supposed to be a secret crime family heir. But then they stepped outside and a black Mercedes was waiting at the curb, and a man in a dark suit opened the rear door, and Damien was guiding her inside before she could scream or run or do anything except let herself be swept away from the only life she'd ever known. The car started moving. Lena looked at Damien, really looked at him, and saw something she hadn't noticed before. Underneath the cold billionaire exterior, underneath the threats and the commands, there was something desperate in his eyes. Something broken. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked quietly. Damien was silent for a long moment. Then, "Because you knew my mother's lullaby, because you're wearing her locket, and because if there's even a chance, even the smallest possibility that you're connected to Nico somehow, that you might know something that could lead me to him." His voice cracked. "Then I don't care if you're a Romano or the devil himself. I'm not letting you out of my sight until I find my brother." Lena looked down at the locket in her palm, at the tiny ship's wheel wrapped in thorns. "I don't know anything about your brother," she whispered. "Then we'll find out together." The Morelli estate was not a house. It was a fortress. They drove for 90 minutes north of the city, leaving behind the skyscrapers and traffic and normal world until they were deep in wooded hills that looked like something out of a movie. The car turned off the main road onto a private drive guarded by men with earpieces and guns visible under their jackets. They passed through 2 security checkpoints before the house even came into view. When it did, Lena forgot how to breathe. Stone walls, iron gates, gardens that probably required a full-time staff of 20. The main building looked like it had been transplanted directly from a Sicilian hillside, all arches and balconies and windows that glowed with warm light against the darkness. "This is where you live?" Lena heard herself ask. "When I'm not in the city." Damien was already out of the car waiting for her to follow. "My daughter prefers it here. More space to run around." "You have a daughter?" Something flickered across his face. The first real emotion she'd seen from him besides anger and shock. "Isabella, she's 8. She's asleep right now, so you won't meet her tonight." The way he said it made Lena's chest ache, like his daughter was the only soft thing left in his entire world. They walked into the house, and Lena tried not to stare at the marble floors, the paintings that were probably worth more than her life, the massive staircase that curved up to a second floor she couldn't even see. A woman in her 50s appeared from somewhere and took Damien's coat without a word. "Is my grandfather awake?" Damien asked her. "In his study. He's expecting you." They walked down a hallway lined with family portraits, stern-looking men in old-fashioned suits, women in pearls and expressions that suggested smiling was a sign of weakness. Damien stopped in front of a heavy wooden door and knocked twice. "Enter," came a voice from inside. Rough, old, but still commanding. The study was all dark wood and leather chairs and books in Italian that Lena couldn't read. And in the center of it, sitting in a wheelchair with a blanket across his lap, was the oldest man Lena had ever seen. He had to be 90, at least. His face was a roadmap of wrinkles, his hands spotted and shaking, his body folded in on itself like paper. But his eyes, sharp, black, and burning with an intelligence that age hadn't touched, fixed on Lena the moment she walked in. "This is her?" he asked in Italian. "Yes, Damien replied in the same language. "She has the locket." The old man switched to English, his accent thick. "Come here, girl. Let me see." Lena glanced at Damien, who nodded. She approached the wheelchair slowly. The old man reached out with trembling fingers and took the locket from her hand. He turned it over, studied the engraving, opened it to look at the symbol inside. Then he did something Lena didn't expect. He started to cry. Silent tears ran down his weathered face as he held the locket like it was the most precious thing in the world. "Maria," he whispered. "Oh, Maria." Damien went very still. "You knew her?" "Knew her?" The old man laughed bitterly. "I loved her 60 years ago, before the families went to war, before everything turned to blood and betrayal. Maria Romano was the most beautiful girl in Sicily. We were going to marry, run away to America together, start over." He looked at Lena with those burning eyes. But her father found out, said a Romano could never marry a Morelli. He sent her away, forced her to marry another man. I never saw her again. I thought she'd forgotten me. Moved on. Had a life I wasn't part of. He held up the locket. This was mine. I gave it to her the night before she disappeared. I told her it would keep her safe, that someday, when the war ended, we'd find each other again. The pieces started clicking into place in Lena's head, forming a picture that made her stomach turn. "My grandmother," she said slowly. "She left Sicily and came to America. Married a man she didn't love, had a daughter, my mother, and she kept your locket for 60 years. The old man nodded. "She never forgot. Neither did I." Damien was staring at his grandfather like he'd never seen him before. "Why didn't you tell me? All these years, all the hatred between our families. Because I was a coward." The old man's voice was harsh with self-loathing. "Because I let pride and fear in my father's expectations destroy the only thing I ever loved. Because I built an empire on the ashes of what Maria and I could have been, and I've spent 60 years trying to convince myself it was worth it." He looked at Lena again. "You have her eyes," he whispered. "Maria's eyes. That same softness, that same strength hiding underneath." Lena didn't know what to say. This was too much. Too big. She felt like she was drowning in history and blood feuds and secrets that had festered for generations. "I need to go home," she said. "I need to call my sister. I need—" The explosion knocked her off her feet. One second she was standing in the study. The next she was on the floor with her ears ringing and smoke pouring through a hole in the wall. Damien was shouting something, pulling her up, pushing her toward the door. The old man was trying to wheel himself away from the flames. More explosions. Gunfire. Screaming from somewhere in the house. "Get her to the safe room," the old man yelled. "Damien, go!" "What about you?" "I'm 93 years old and I've been ready to die for 20 years. Go!" Damien hesitated for one agonizing second, then grabbed Lena and ran. They burst into the hallway and it was chaos. Men in black tactical gear were flooding through the front entrance, firing at Damien's security team. Bullets tore through paintings and shattered windows. Someone was screaming about the girl. "Find the girl! The Romano heir!" They were here for her. Damien pulled Lena down a different corridor away from the fighting. They reached a door hidden behind a bookshelf, and he shoved it open to reveal stairs descending into darkness. "Move!" he commanded. Lena stumbled down the stairs, her hands scraping against rough stone walls, her mind still trying to catch up with what was happening. Behind them, she heard more explosions, more gunfire, someone screaming in Italian. They reached the bottom and Damien pulled her into a tunnel, actually an underground tunnel, like something out of a spy movie. Emergency lights flickered overhead. "This leads to the garage," Damien said, already moving. "We can—" He stopped. At the far end of the tunnel, 3 men were waiting, armed, smiling. "Going somewhere, Mr. Morelli?" one of them asked in an accent Lena couldn't place. Damien stepped in front of Lena, shielding her with his body. "Who sent you?" His voice was deadly calm. "Does it matter? The Romano family wants their heir back. They're willing to pay extremely well for her safe return." The man's smile widened. "You, on the other hand, they don't care about, so we can do this easy or hard. Your choice." Damien looked at Lena. "When I move," he whispered, "you run back the way we came. Find another exit. Don't stop." "What are you—" He moved. Damien threw himself at the 3 gunmen with a speed that shouldn't have been possible for a man in an expensive suit. He tackled the first one, used him as a shield when the others opened fire, somehow got hold of a gun, and— Lena didn't wait to see the rest. She ran, back up the stairs, her lungs burning, her mind screaming that she was leaving him to die. She burst out of the hidden door and nearly collided with a little girl in princess pajamas, standing frozen in the hallway while the house burned around her. Isabella. Damien's daughter, 8 years old and terrified, clutching a stuffed rabbit and crying. "Where's Daddy?" the girl sobbed. "Where's my daddy?" Lena didn't think. She grabbed Isabella's hand and pulled her toward the nearest exit, a door that led to the gardens. They ran across manicured lawns while behind them the Morelli estate burned and gunfire echoed through the night. They made it to the tree line and Lena pulled Isabella down behind a hedge, both of them breathing hard. "We need to hide," Lena whispered. "We need to stay quiet. Can you do that?" Isabella nodded, tears streaming down her face. They huddled together in the darkness, listening to the sounds of war, and Lena realized with crystalline clarity that her life had just ended. The waitress from Boston was gone. The girl who sent money to her sister and worried about rent and dreamed of maybe going back to college someday, that person didn't exist anymore. She'd been replaced by someone wearing a dead woman's locket, carrying a bloodline she didn't want, hunted by people she'd never met, and the only person who might be able to protect her was currently fighting for his life in a tunnel beneath a burning house. Isabella grabbed her hand. "You're shaking," the little girl whispered. "I'm scared." "Me too." They sat there in the darkness, two strangers bound together by violence and blood, and waited for the world to stop ending. It didn't. The gunfire stopped around 3 in the morning. Lena knew because she'd been counting the seconds between each burst, her arm wrapped around Isabella, both of them shivering behind the hedge, even though the night wasn't cold. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the noise, heavy and complete, like the world was holding its breath. "Is it over?" Isabella whispered. "I don't know." "Can we go find Daddy now?" Lena's throat tightened. She had no idea if Damien was alive. The last she'd seen him, he'd been throwing himself at armed men in a tunnel, buying her time to run. That had been hours ago. For all she knew, he was bleeding out somewhere in the wreckage of his estate, or already dead, or captured by whoever had launched this attack. But she couldn't say that to an 8-year-old clutching a stuffed rabbit. "We need to stay hidden a little longer," Lena said quietly. "Just to be safe." Isabella's lower lip trembled. "I want my daddy." "I know, sweetheart. I know." They waited another 20 minutes before Lena risked moving. She crawled to the edge of the hedge and peered back toward the house. The main building was still standing, but entire sections were blackened by fire and smoke. Emergency lights flickered in broken windows. She couldn't see any movement. "Stay here," she told Isabella. "Don't move. Don't make a sound. I'm going to No! Isabella grabbed her arm with surprising strength. "Don't leave me. Please don't leave me." The raw terror in the girl's voice cut straight through Lena's chest. She knew that fear. She'd felt it 6 years ago when the police came to her door to tell her about the accident, when suddenly she was alone except for a 16-year-old sister who needed her to be strong when she had no idea how. "Okay," Lena said softly. "Okay, we'll go together. But you have to stay close to me and stay quiet. Can you do that?" Isabella nodded, her fingers digging into Lena's arm. They moved through the gardens like ghosts, staying low, using the ornamental bushes and sculptures for cover. Lena's heart was hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Every shadow looked like a person. Every sound made her want to run. They reached the side entrance, a servant's door that hung crooked on broken hinges. Lena pushed it open slowly, wincing at the creak. Inside was devastation. Furniture overturned, paintings torn from walls, bullet holes in the plaster like constellations of violence. The smell of smoke and something else, something metallic that made Lena's stomach turn. Blood. There was blood on the marble floors, smeared across the walls, pooled in corners. Not puddles, just enough to tell a story Lena didn't want to read. "Don't look," she told Isabella, trying to position herself between the girl and the worst of it. "Just keep your eyes on me." They made their way through the wreckage, stepping over debris, past rooms that had been torn apart by gunfire and explosions. Lena had no idea where she was going. She just kept moving, kept searching for any sign of life, kept praying they wouldn't run into whoever had done this. They found the old man first. He was still in his wheelchair in the study, surrounded by rubble and ash. For one horrible second, Lena thought he was dead. Then his eyes opened. "Girl," he rasped, "you're alive." Lena rushed to his side. Up close, she could see he'd been hit. His shoulder was bleeding through his shirt, and his breathing was labored and wet-sounding. But he was conscious, alert. "We need to get you to a hospital," Lena said. No hospitals. Too dangerous. He coughed, and blood flecked his lips. They'll be watching, waiting for any Morelli to surface. You're hurt badly. I'm dying anyway, girl. Have been for months. Cancer. This just speeds things up. He grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. Where's Damien? I don't know. We got separated during the attack. The old man's face crumpled. For a second, he looked like what he was, a 93-year-old man who'd lost too much, survived too long, seen his world burn one too many times. Isabella, he said, noticing the girl for the first time. Come here, sweetheart. Isabella hesitated, then moved closer. The old man reached into his jacket pocket with shaking fingers and pulled out a small leather notebook. Listen to me very carefully, he said, his voice fading. Both of you. This notebook contains information your enemies would kill for. Bank accounts, safe houses, names of people who owe us favors, codes to access funds we've hidden all over the world. He pressed it into Lena's hands. Why are you giving this to me? Lena asked. I don't want... What you want stopped mattering the moment you put on that locket. His grip tightened. You're a Romano heir, whether you like it or not. And the people who attacked tonight, they weren't just after you. They were Romano soldiers. Your own family sent them. Lena's blood turned to ice. What? Your uncle, Carlo Romano. He runs the family now after your grandfather died 5 years ago. He's brutal, paranoid. When word got out that Maria's granddaughter had surfaced carrying the heir's locket, he panicked. He couldn't risk you claiming power, so he sent his men to eliminate you before you became a threat. I don't want power. I don't want anything to do with... Doesn't matter what you want. The old man's voice turned sharp despite his weakness. You exist. That's enough. As long as you're alive, you're a challenge to Carlo's authority. He won't stop hunting you until you're dead or until he's dead. Those are your only options. Lena felt the world tilting sideways. This couldn't be real. 24 hours ago, her biggest problem had been paying rent. Now she was being hunted by her own family, a family she didn't even know existed until tonight. No? Isabella's small voice cut through the horror. Where's Daddy? The old man's face softened. I don't know, little one, but your father is very hard to kill. If anyone can survive this, it's him. He looked back at Lena. There's a car in the garage, black SUV. Keys are under the driver's seat. Take Isabella and go. Get as far from here as possible. I can't just leave you. Oh, I'm already dead. Been dead for 60 years ever since I let Maria go. He smiled, and it was the saddest thing Lena had ever seen. But you can still run, still have a life. Take my great-granddaughter somewhere safe and don't look back. Before Lena could respond, she heard footsteps in the hallway. Multiple sets, moving fast. The old man heard them too. He straightened in his wheelchair despite the obvious pain. Go, he hissed. Now, through the kitchen. There's a back way to the garage. But go! Lena grabbed Isabella's hand and ran. They burst through the kitchen door just as armed men entered the study behind them. She heard shouting, heard the old man's voice raised in Italian, defiant and strong despite everything, and then a single gunshot that echoed through the house like the end of the world. Isabella screamed. Lena clapped a hand over the girl's mouth and kept moving, tears blurring her vision, her heart breaking for a man she'd known for less than 3 hours. They reached the garage and found the SUV exactly where he'd said. Lena fumbled under the seat for the keys while Isabella sobbed against her side. We have to go back, Isabella choked out. We have to help No. We can't. Lena's voice cracked. I'm sorry, baby. We can't. She got the engine started just as the garage door burst open and 3 men in tactical gear appeared. Lena didn't think. She slammed the gas pedal to the floor and the SUV shot forward, clipping one of the men and sending him sprawling. The others dove aside as she crashed through the garage door and out into the night. Bullets hammered the rear window, spiderwebbing the glass but not breaking through. The SUV fishtailed on gravel before finding traction. Lena fought the wheel, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold on. Get down, she yelled at Isabella. Stay down. The girl curled up in the footwell, still crying, still clutching that stupid stuffed rabbit like it was the only real thing left in the universe. Lena drove. She had no plan, no destination, just pure animal instinct screaming at her to put distance between them and the burning estate. She took corners too fast, nearly rolled the SUV twice, didn't slow down until they were on the highway heading south with nothing but darkness and road ahead. Only then did she let herself breathe. Only then did she realize Isabella had gone completely silent. "Hey," Lena said softly, glancing at the footwell. "You okay?" No response. "Isabella?" The girl looked up, and her face was empty. Shock, Lena realized. The kid was in shock, her eyes glazed and distant, her breathing too shallow. "Talk to me, sweetheart," Lena tried. "Tell me about your rabbit. What's its name?" Nothing. "Isabella, I need you to stay with me. I need you to— Is Nono dead?" The question came out flat, mechanical. Lena's throat closed. She wanted to lie, wanted to protect this child from the truth, but she'd learned 6 years ago that lies didn't help. Maya had known their parents were dead the second she saw Lena's face. Kids always knew. "Yes," Lena whispered. "I think so." "And Daddy?" "I don't know." Isabella nodded once, like she'd expected this answer. Then she closed her eyes and didn't say another word. They drove through the night in silence. Lena kept checking the rearview mirror for headlights, kept expecting gunmen to appear, or police to pull them over, or the universe to deliver one more catastrophe, because why the hell not? But the road stayed empty. The night stayed quiet. Around dawn, Lena pulled into a rest stop somewhere in Pennsylvania. She bought coffee and donuts with cash she found in the SUV's console. There was a lot of cash, actually, thousands of dollars rubber-banded together and stuffed in the glove compartment like someone had been preparing for exactly this kind of emergency. Isabella ate half a donut and went back to staring at nothing. Lena sat across from her at a sticky plastic table and tried to figure out what to do next. Her phone had died hours ago. She had no way to contact Maya, no way to know if her sister was safe or if the Romano family had already tracked her down too. The old man's notebook was burning a hole in her jacket pocket, full of secrets she didn't understand and didn't want. "I need to call my sister," Lena said out loud, more to fill the silence than anything. "And we need to find somewhere safe to stay, somewhere they won't find us." "They'll find us everywhere," Isabella said quietly. It was the first thing she'd said in hours. "Daddy told me once. He said our family has enemies everywhere, and they never stop looking, and that's why we have to be careful all the time." "Your dad sounds paranoid." "He's smart." Isabella's voice was fierce despite her exhaustion. "And he's not dead. I know he's not dead." Lena wanted to believe that. She really did. But she'd seen the way Damien had thrown himself at those gunmen, buying time he probably knew would cost him everything. "We should try to find him," Isabella continued. "We should go back." "We can't go back. It's too dangerous." "But if he's hurt—" "Oh, then there's nothing we can do." The words came out harsher than Lena intended. She softened her voice. "Isabella, I know you want to help your dad, but right now the best thing we can do is stay alive. That's what he'd want." Isabella looked at her with those big, heartbroken eyes. "You don't know what he'd want. You don't even know him." "You're right. I don't." Lena leaned forward. "But I know he loves you. I saw it on his face when he talked about you. And I know he'd burn the whole world down to keep you safe. So right now, staying alive is how we honor that. Okay?" Isabella didn't answer, but she didn't argue either. Lena bought a burner phone from a vending machine and called Maya. It rang 6 times before her sister picked up. "Hello?" The sound of Maya's voice made Lena's eyes burn with tears she'd been holding back for hours. "It's me," she managed. "Lena? Oh my God, I've been trying to call you all night. Your phone kept going to voicemail and I was so worried." "Are you okay? Are you safe?" "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm at work." "Why wouldn't I be?" "Lena, what's wrong? You sound weird." Lena closed her eyes. How could she even begin to explain? "Hey Maya, turns out our grandmother was a crime family heir and now I'm being hunted by our mafia uncle, and also I accidentally kidnapped a billionaire's daughter and we're on the run." "I need you to do something for me," Lena said instead, "and I need you to not ask questions." "You're scaring me." "I know. I'm sorry, but this is important." Lena took a breath. "Pack a bag. Just the essentials. Get out of the apartment today and go stay with your friend Rachel, the one from pharmacy school. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Don't use your credit card. Don't post anything on social media. Just disappear for a while." "What the hell is going on?" I can't explain right now, but there are people, bad people, who might come looking for me. And if they can't find me, they might try to use you instead. So I need you somewhere safe until I figure this out." There was a long silence on the other end. "This is about last night, isn't it?" Maya said finally. "About the money. What did you do?" "Nothing illegal." "Technically true. Just trust me, please. Go to Rachel's. Stay there until I call you again." "When will that be?" "I don't know." Another silence. "You promise you're okay?" Maya's voice was small, scared. "I promise." The lie tasted like ash. "I love you." "I love you too." Lena hung up before she started crying. When she looked up, Isabella was watching her with an expression that was far too knowing for an 8-year-old. "You have a sister," the girl said. "Yeah. And you're trying to protect her, like Daddy tries to protect me." "Yeah." Isabella nodded slowly. "Okay, I get it now. You're not just scared for yourself, you're scared for her too." "I'm terrified for her." "Then we should stick together." Isabella reached across the table and took Lena's hand. Her palm was tiny and warm and trembling slightly. "Because we're both trying to protect someone we love. That makes us the same." Lena's vision blurred. She squeezed the girl's hand and tried to find words, but there weren't any that fit. They sat like that for a long moment. Two people who'd been strangers 24 hours ago, now bound together by violence and fear and a desperate need to survive. Finally, Lena stood up. "Come on," she said. "We need to keep moving." They got back in the SUV and drove south. Lena had a vague idea that they should head somewhere warm, somewhere far from New York, somewhere the Romano family wouldn't think to look. Florida, maybe. Or Texas. Somewhere they could disappear. But around noon, her phone rang. Unknown number. Lena stared at it, her finger hovering over the decline button. Nobody should have this number. She'd just bought the phone 2 hours ago, unless... She answered. "Lena Hart?" The voice was male, unfamiliar, with a faint Italian accent. "Who is this?" "My name is Marco Vitale. I work for Damian Morelli. I'm calling because I have information you need." Lena's heart stopped. "Is he alive?" "Yes. Barely. He was shot 3 times during the attack on the estate. He's in surgery right now at a secure location, but before they sedated him, he gave me very specific instructions to find you and his daughter. Are you both safe?" "We're..." Lena paused. "This could be a trap." "How did you get this number?" "Mr. Morelli had tracking devices installed in all his vehicles. The SUV you're driving is pinging about 40 miles outside Philadelphia. I've been trying to reach you since dawn." Lena glanced at Isabella, who was listening with wide eyes. "Daddy's alive?" the girl whispered. "Yes," Marco said, apparently hearing her through the phone. "And he's asking for you, both of you. I can send coordinates to a safe house where you can meet him once he's recovered enough to travel." "Why should I trust you?" "Because right now I'm the only person in the world who can help you." Marco's voice was steady, calm. "The Romano family has put a price on your head. $2 million for you alive, $1 million for proof of death. Every bounty hunter and mercenary between here and Sicily is looking for you. You need protection, resources, a plan. Mr. Morelli can provide all of that." "In exchange for what?" "Nothing. He just wants you and his daughter safe." Lena wanted to believe that, but she'd learned in the last 12 hours that nothing in this world came for free. "I need to think about it," she said. "You don't have time to think. The longer you stay on the road, the more likely someone spots you. There are traffic cameras everywhere, facial recognition software. If I could find you, so can they." He was right. Lena knew he was right. But the idea of walking into another trap, of trusting someone she'd never met. "Send me the coordinates," she said finally. "But if this is a setup, if anything happens to this girl, I swear to you." "It's not a setup. You have my word. The word of a man I've never met working for someone I barely know. Forgive me if that doesn't fill me with confidence." Marco actually laughed. "Fair enough. The coordinates are on their way. There's a medical team waiting, food, clean clothes, everything you need. And Ms. Hart, Mr. Morelli wanted me to tell you something." "What?" "He said to tell you he's sorry for dragging you into this, for putting you in danger. He said if he could go back and leave you alone that night at the restaurant, He would. Lena's throat tightened. Tell him... She stopped. What could she possibly say? Tell him we're coming. She hung up. The coordinates arrived 30 seconds later. A location in rural Maryland, about 2 hours south. We're going to see Daddy? Isabella asked, hope lighting up her face for the first time since the attack. Yeah, Lena said. We're going to see your dad. They drove through the afternoon, watching the landscape change from highway sprawl to farmland to forest. Lena kept checking the mirrors for tails, kept expecting every passing car to be full of gunmen. But nothing happened. The world stayed quiet and ordinary, like it had no idea two people were running for their lives. The safe house turned out to be an old farmhouse set back from the road, surrounded by fields and trees. 2 black SUVs were parked in the driveway. Men in suits stood at the perimeter, trying to look casual and failing. Lena pulled up slowly, her hands tight on the wheel. If anything feels wrong, she told Isabella, you run. You don't wait for me. You just run. Understand? Isabella nodded. They got out of the car and one of the suited men approached. He was young, maybe 30, with a professional smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ms. Hart, I'm Marco. We spoke on the phone. Welcome. Where's Damien? Inside, recovering. The surgery went well, but he's weak. He shouldn't be moving yet, but he insisted on being here when you arrived. Marco gestured toward the house. Please, come in. They followed him inside. The farmhouse was bigger than it looked from the outside. Updated, modern, clearly used as a safe house for exactly this kind of situation. Medical equipment was set up in what had probably been a living room. And in the center of it all, propped up in a hospital bed with bandages visible under his shirt, was Damien Morelli. He looked terrible. His face was gray. His eyes were sunken and ringed with dark circles. There were IV lines running into his arm and monitors beeping softly beside the bed. But when he saw Isabella, his entire expression transformed. Bella, he whispered. Isabella ran to him, throwing herself against his chest despite the injuries. Damien wrapped his arms around her and closed his eyes, and for a moment all the coldness Lena had seen in him melted away. He was just a father holding his daughter, relief and love and bone-deep exhaustion written across his face. I thought, Isabella was crying, I thought you were dead, like Nonno. I thought, I'm okay, sweetheart. I'm here. He looked at Lena over his daughter's head. Thank you, he mouthed. Lena nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Marco cleared his throat. We should let Mr. Morelli rest. Miss Hart, there's a room upstairs where you can clean up. Get some sleep. We can talk strategy in the morning. I'm not going anywhere until someone explains what the hell is happening. Lena's voice came out harder than she intended. Who attacked the estate? Why? And why does my uncle want me dead? Damien shifted in his bed, wincing. Isabella, go with Marco. He'll get you something to eat. But Daddy, I need to talk to Lena alone. Adult stuff. You'll be right down the hall. Isabella hesitated, then nodded. Marco led her out of the room, leaving Lena alone with the injured billionaire who'd turned her life inside out. Sit, Damien said. Please. Lena sat in a chair beside the bed, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. She hadn't slept in over 30 hours. Her clothes smelled like smoke. Her hands were shaking. My grandfather told you about Carlo Romano, Damien said. It wasn't a question. He said Carlo sent the men who attacked, that he wants me dead because I'm a threat to his power. He's right. Carlo is paranoid and brutal. When he took over the family 5 years ago, he purged anyone who might challenge him, killed his own cousins. Your mother was smart to disappear when she did. I still don't understand why he cares about me. I'm nobody. I have no interest in his criminal empire. It doesn't matter what you want. That locket around your neck, Damien gestured weakly at her chest. That's a symbol of legitimacy. In the old days, it was given to the chosen heir, the one who would lead the family into the next generation. Your grandmother was supposed to inherit it. When she disappeared, everyone assumed it was lost or destroyed, but she kept it, and she gave it to you. So what? It's just jewelry. It's proof of bloodline. In the underworld, symbols matter. That locket says you have a claim to power, and Carlo can't allow that claim to exist. Lena felt sick. So what am I supposed to do? I can't just give up the locket. It's all I have left of my grandmother. I know. Damien's voice was gentle. But keeping it makes you a target. As long as you wear it, you're a walking declaration of war against Carlo. He won't stop hunting you, ever. Then I'll destroy it. Destroying it won't help. People have already seen it. Word has already spread. You can't make yourself invisible again. Lena stood up, pacing. This is insane. I didn't ask for any of this. I was just trying to pay my rent and keep my sister alive. Now I'm, what, some kind of mafia princess? I don't even know how to... She broke off, the enormity of it all crashing down on her. Her knees went weak and she grabbed the edge of the bed for support. Damien reached out and took her hand. I know, he said quietly. I know it's not fair, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry I pulled you into this, but we're here now, and the only way forward is through. Through what? Through the war, through Carlo, through all of it. His grip tightened. I've spent 15 years preparing to destroy the Romano family. I have resources, connections, people who owe me favors. I can protect you, but I need something from you in return. Lena's stomach dropped. What? Help me find my brother. She stared at him. Your brother's been missing for 15 years. How am I supposed to? That locket connects you to the Romano family. You have access I don't. Information I can't get. If you agree to work with me, to use your position as an heir to infiltrate Carlo's organization, we might be able to find Nico. Save him. You want me to spy on my own family? People I've never met? I want you to help me save an innocent man who's been held prisoner for 15 years. And in the process, we take down the people hunting you. Win-win. Lena pulled her hand away. You're using me. Yes. Damien didn't even try to deny it. I'm using you. Just like I'm using my money and my connections and every resource I have. Because I've lost too much to this war, and I'm not losing my brother too. And if I say no, then I'll still protect you and Isabella. I'll help you disappear somewhere Carlo can't find you, but you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, wondering when he'll catch up. And if I say yes, then we end this. Together, we take the fight to Carlo. We use your bloodline claim to turn his own people against him. We find Nico, and when it's over, you'll be free. Truly free. Lena looked at this man, this cold, ruthless billionaire who'd somehow become the only person standing between her and death. She thought about Maya hiding at Rachel's apartment, about Isabella, traumatized and scared, about all the innocent people caught in the crossfire of a war that had been raging for generations. And she thought about the alternative, running forever, never feeling safe, always waiting for the bullet or the knife or the bomb. If I do this, she said slowly, I need promises, real promises. Name them. My sister stays protected, no matter what happens to me. If I die, you make sure she's safe and taken care of. Done. And Isabella, if anything happens to you, I want to know she'll be okay too, that she won't end up in the system or with some distant relative who doesn't care. Damien's face softened. If something happens to me, she goes to my cousin in Milan. Good woman, loves kids. Isabella would be safe there. Okay, Lena took a breath. Then I'm in. I'll help you find your brother. But the second this is over, the second Carlo is dealt with, I'm out. I go back to my regular life and we never speak again. Agreed. They shook hands and Lena wondered if she was making a deal with the devil or signing her own death warrant. Probably both. The training started the next morning before Lena's coffee had cooled enough to drink. Marco appeared in her doorway at 6, dressed in workout clothes and carrying a duffel bag that clinked when he set it down. Lena was still in the clothes she'd slept in, borrowed sweats that were too big and smelled like fabric softener, and her body ached from sleeping in a car and running for her life. We're starting now? She asked, her voice rough with exhaustion. Mr. Morelli wants you ready as soon as possible. The Romano family is holding a gala in 2 weeks. Major event. All the important players will be there. That's when you make your entrance. 2 weeks? I can't. You can, and you will. Marco's tone left no room for argument. Come on. Basement. Lena followed him downstairs, clutching her coffee like a lifeline. The basement had been converted into a training facility. Mats on the floor, weights in the corner, a punching bag hanging from a reinforced beam. It looked like something out of a spy movie, which would have been funny if Lena's life hadn't turned into exactly that. First lesson, Marco said, dropping the duffel bag on a mat. You need to know how to defend yourself. Basic self-defense won't cut it in this world. You need to be able to hurt someone if necessary. Maybe even kill them. Lena's stomach turned. I'm not killing anyone. You might not have a choice. He pulled a training knife from the bag, rubber, but realistic enough to make Lena's pulse spike. The people at that gala are predators. They'll smell weakness on you from across the room. You need to convince them you're dangerous. I'm a waitress from Boston. How am I supposed to convince trained killers that I'm dangerous? By becoming dangerous. Marco tossed her the knife. Defend yourself. He came at her fast, and Lena barely got her hands up before he grabbed her wrist and twisted. The knife clattered to the floor. She yelped in pain. Too slow, Marco said. Again. They went at it for an hour. Marco didn't go easy on her. He threw her to the mat, twisted her arms behind her back, demonstrated a dozen ways she could be disarmed and disabled in seconds. By the time he called a break, Lena was bruised, sweating, and ready to cry from frustration. I can't do this, she gasped, sitting against the wall. I'm not a fighter. I'm not... You're not a waitress anymore either. Marco's voice was firm but not unkind. That person is gone. You need to accept that. I don't want to accept it. I want my life back. Then you should have left the locket at home that night. The words hit harder than any of Marco's training moves. Because he was right. Lena had made choices. Stupid, desperate choices maybe, but choices nonetheless. She'd approached Damien's table. She'd spoken Sicilian. She'd gotten into his car. And now she was here, learning how to hurt people so she could survive long enough to infiltrate a crime family and find a missing boy she'd never met. Get up, Marco said, offering his hand. We're not done. The second hour was worse than the first. Then came lessons in reading body language, identifying threats, moving through a room without drawing attention. Marco drilled her on Romano family history, who was who, what territories they controlled, what grudges ran deepest. He made her memorize faces from photographs until she could identify Carlo Romano's top lieutenants by sight. Quiz, Marco said around noon, spreading photos across the table. Name them. Lena pointed to each one in turn. Salvatore Russo. Runs drug operations in New Jersey. Known for excessive violence, suspected of killing his own brother over a territory dispute. She moved to the next photo. Antonio Greco. Money laundering specialist. Hates Carlo, but too afraid to move against him. Likes expensive watches and younger women. Good. Next. Elena Marino, Carlo's sister. More ruthless than he is, if that's possible. Runs the human trafficking networks. 3 husbands, all dead under suspicious circumstances. Marco nodded approval. You're learning fast. I have a good memory. Lena rubbed her eyes. Doesn't mean I'm ready to walk into a room with these people and pretend I belong there. You will be. We still have time. But time moved differently when you were preparing for war. Days blurred together in a cycle of training, studying, and trying not to think too hard about what she was actually preparing for. Damien recovered slowly, spending most of his time in bed or on phone calls conducted in rapid Italian that Lena couldn't follow. Isabella shadowed Lena everywhere, a silent presence that reminded her constantly what was at stake. On the 4th day, a stylist arrived with racks of clothes. Mr. Morelli wants you fitted for the gala, the woman explained, her accent French and her expression bored. You'll need to look the part. The part, apparently, required a dress that cost more than Lena had made in 6 months of waitressing. Black velvet that clung to her body like it had been sewn directly onto her skin, with a neckline that made her uncomfortable and a slit up the thigh that made her feel exposed. I can't wear this, Lena protested. You can and you will, the stylist said, pinning the hem. These people respect power and beauty. You need to project both. I'm not beautiful. Everyone's beautiful in the right dress with the right lighting. The stylist stood back, examining her work. Besides, you have good bone structure, strong features. We work with that. Lena looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. The dress transformed her, made her look sophisticated and dangerous and like someone who belonged in a world of criminals and killers. It was terrifying. That evening, Damien finally came downstairs for dinner. He still moved carefully, favoring his left side where the bullets had torn through muscle and tissue, but the color had returned to his face. Isabella practically vibrated with joy at seeing him upright and mobile. Daddy, can we go home soon? the girl asked over pasta that one of Marco's team had prepared. Not yet, sweetheart. We need to stay here a little longer, where it's safe. I miss my room and my toys. And Rosa. Rosa, Lena had learned, was the nanny who'd been at the estate the night of the attack. She'd survived, barely, and was recovering at another safe house. I know. I miss home too. Damien's voice was gentle in a way Lena hadn't heard before. But right now, this is where we need to be. After Isabella went to bed, Damien asked Lena to join him in what passed for a study. A small room with a desk and maps spread across every surface. Maps of New York, Sicily, shipping routes, properties owned by various criminal enterprises. Marco says you're progressing well, Damien said, lowering himself into a chair with visible effort. Marco is kind. Lena remained standing. I'm terrible at this. You're learning, that's what matters. He gestured to the maps. I want to go over the plan for the gala. Make sure you understand what we're asking you to do. Walk in wearing a dead woman's locket and claim I'm the rightful Romano heir. Sounds simple. It's not simple, and we both know it. Carlo will test you, question your legitimacy, try to provoke you into making a mistake that proves you're lying. What if I do make a mistake? Then you'll probably die, and so will everyone else in that room who sided with you. Lena sat down heavily. You really know how to motivate a person. I'm not trying to motivate you. I'm trying to prepare you. Damien leaned forward despite the obvious pain. Carlo is smart, paranoid. He's been consolidating power for 5 years by eliminating anyone who might challenge him. When you walk in claiming to be Maria Romano's granddaughter, carrying proof of your bloodline, he's going to see you as the greatest threat he's ever faced. So why are we doing this? Why not just, I don't know, shoot him from a distance and be done with it? Because killing Carlo doesn't solve the problem. Someone else would just take over. His sister Elena probably, and she's worse. We need to dismantle the power structure from the inside. Turn his own people against him. Make them see you as a better option. Me? A waitress with no experience? You're not a waitress anymore. You're Maria Romano's granddaughter, the last living direct descendant of Giuseppe Romano, who founded the family 3 generations ago. Your blood gives you legitimacy that no one else has. And if we play this right, we can use that to fracture Carlo's control. Lena looked at the maps, at the web of connections and territories marked in different colors. It was overwhelming, impossible. What about your brother? She asked. How does Nico fit into all this? Damien's expression darkened. Carlo has him, I'm certain of it. The Romanos took Nico 15 years ago and they've kept him hidden ever since. Maybe as leverage, maybe as a weapon they're training to use against me. I don't know. But if we get inside Carlo's organization, if we get access to his inner circle, we might find Nico. Yes. And if we don't? If he's already dead? Then at least I'll know. Damien's voice cracked slightly. I'll finally know. The vulnerability in those words made Lena's chest ache. She'd been so focused on seeing Damien as a cold, calculating billionaire that she'd forgotten he was also a brother, a father, a man who'd spent 15 years searching for family he'd lost. I'll do my best, she said quietly. I can't promise I won't screw this up, but I'll try. That's all I'm asking. They spent the next hour going over details. Who would be at the gala, where the exits were located, what signals Marco would use if something went wrong. By the time Lena returned to her room, her head was spinning with information and her body ached from another day of training. She found Isabella sitting on the floor outside her door, still in her pajamas, clutching that worn stuffed rabbit. Hey, Lena said softly. Can't sleep? Isabella shook her head. I keep having bad dreams. About Nonno. About the fire. Lena sat down beside her on the floor, her back against the wall. Me too. Really? Yeah. Every time I close my eyes, I see the estate burning, hear the gunshots. It's like my brain won't let me forget. Isabella leaned against her shoulder. Daddy says bad dreams go away if you talk about them. Your dad's pretty smart. He's sad, though, I can tell. He tries to hide it from me, but I know. Isabella's voice was small. He's been sad for a long time, since before Mommy died. He just got good at pretending. Lena thought about the man she'd seen tonight, the careful vulnerability when he talked about his brother, the way his whole face changed when Isabella entered a room. The coldness was armor, protection against a world that had taken too much from him. "Can I ask you something?" Isabella said. "Are you going to leave after the gala thing, after Daddy finds Uncle Nico?" "That's the plan." "Oh." The girl was quiet for a moment. "I was hoping you'd stay." Lena's throat tightened. "Why?" "Because Daddy's different when you're around. Less scary, more like a real person." Isabella looked up at her with those two wise eyes. "And because I like you, you're nice." "I'm really not. I'm just trying to survive." "That's what nice people do. They try to survive and help other people survive too. Mean people just think about themselves." Lena wanted to tell her it wasn't that simple, that kindness was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore, that getting attached to people in this world was dangerous. But Isabella was 8 years old and had already lost too much. She didn't need another lecture about harsh realities. "I like you too," Lena said instead, "and I promise I'll stay until this is over, until you and your dad are safe." "And your sister too?" "And my sister too." Isabella seemed satisfied with that answer. She stayed pressed against Lena's side for another few minutes before her breathing evened out and she fell asleep right there in the hallway. Lena carried her to bed, tucked her in with the stuffed rabbit, and stood in the doorway watching her sleep. This kid deserved better, deserved a normal childhood with friends and school and worries that didn't include armed attacks and family wars. But normal wasn't an option anymore. Not for Isabella. Not for any of them. The next week was a blur of preparation. Lena learned to walk in heels that felt like torture devices, learned which fork to use for which course at a formal dinner, learned how to deflect questions without appearing evasive, and how to read the room for threats. Marco brought in a dialect coach to refine her Sicilian, making sure she could switch between modern Italian and the old dialect fluidly enough to prove her heritage. "Carlo will test your knowledge," the coach explained. "He'll drop phrases in the old language to see if you understand. If you hesitate even for a second, he'll know you're lying." No pressure then. None at all. Damien joined the training sessions when he was strong enough, pushing Lena harder than Marco did. He made her practice entering rooms, reading body language, controlling her facial expressions. He was ruthless and demanding and didn't accept anything less than perfection. "Again," he'd say when she fumbled a response. "Again, again. I'm trying. Try harder. These people will eat you alive if you show weakness." After one particularly brutal session where Lena had broken down crying from frustration, Damien found her in the kitchen an hour later. She was stress-eating leftover pasta directly from the container, too tired to care about manners. "I was too hard on you today?" he said without preamble. "Yeah, you were. I'm sorry." He poured himself water from the tap, his movements still careful. "I forget sometimes that you didn't ask for this, that you're not trained for this world." "I'm definitely not trained for this world." Lena set down the pasta container. "I keep thinking about what happens if I mess up. If I say the wrong thing or can't answer one of Carlo's questions, everyone at that gala could die because I'm not good enough. If you mess up, you run. Marco will have exit routes planned. We'll get you out. And then what? Carlo knows I exist, knows I tried to challenge him. He'll never stop hunting me. Then we make sure you don't mess up." Damien sat across from her at the small kitchen table. "I know this is terrifying. I know you feel unprepared, but Lena, I've seen you these past 2 weeks. You're stronger than you think, smarter. You adapt faster than anyone I've ever trained. That's just survival instinct. That's what makes you dangerous. You have something most of these people lost a long time ago. You still care about staying alive. They're so used to violence and death that they've become numb to it. But you're fighting for something real, your sister, a normal life. That gives you an edge they don't have." Lena wanted to believe him, but all she felt was scared. "What if we don't find Nico?" she asked quietly. "What if he's been dead for years and this is all for nothing?" Damien was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. "Then at least I tried. At least I didn't give up on him." He met her eyes. "My mother died thinking I'd failed to protect Nico, that I'd let him be taken. I carry that guilt every day, every single day. If there's even a chance he's alive, I have to take it, even if it means risking everything." "Including your daughter?" "Isabella is protected. No matter what happens at that gala, she'll be safe. I've made arrangements. If things go wrong, Marco gets her out of the country to my cousin in Milan. She'll have a good life there." You've really thought this through. I've had 15 years to think it through. Damien stood slowly. Get some rest. We have 4 more days before the gala. Damien, Lena called as he reached the door. He turned. Thank you for being honest with me about all of it. You deserve honesty. It's the least I can give you. After he left, Lena sat alone in the kitchen and tried to imagine what would happen in 4 days. Would she walk into that gala and convince a room full of criminals that she belonged there? Would she find Nico? Would she survive the night? She had no answers, just fear and determination twisted together so tightly she couldn't tell them apart anymore. The night before the gala, Lena couldn't sleep. She paced her room until 2 in the morning before giving up and heading downstairs. She found Damien in the study, surrounded by papers and photographs, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Couldn't sleep either? She asked from the doorway. He looked up, and in the dim lamplight he looked older than his 32 years. Worn down. Haunted. Too much to think about, he admitted. Too many variables I can't control. Lena entered the room and looked at what he was working on. Blueprints of the building where the gala would be held, security protocols, escape routes marked in red. You really are a control freak, she observed. I prefer thorough planner. Same thing. She picked up one of the photographs, a shot of Carlo Romano at some formal event, smiling for the camera. He looked normal, pleasant even. Nothing about him screamed crime lord. That's what makes him dangerous, Damien said, reading her thoughts. He looks harmless, charming. People underestimate him right up until he's got a knife in their ribs. How reassuring. I'm not trying to reassure you. I'm trying to keep you alive. Lena set down the photograph. Can I ask you something personal? Depends on the question. Isabella's mother, your wife. What happened to her? Damien's expression closed off immediately. That's not relevant to... I'm about to walk into a room full of people who'll try to kill me while pretending I'm your ally. I think I deserve to know who you really are, not just the cold billionaire act. He was quiet for so long Lena thought he wouldn't answer. Then, her name was Sophie. We met in college, before I took over my father's business, before the war with the Romanos escalated into something that consumed my entire life. She was studying art history. Wanted to work in museums. She was normal. Good. Everything I wasn't. What happened, We got married young. Had Isabella. For a few years I actually thought I could have both. The family business and a real family. Keep them separate. Keep Sophie and Isabella safe from the violence. He laughed bitterly. I was stupid. Sophie found out about the business? She knew. I never hid it from her. But knowing about it and living with it are different things. The paranoia, the security measures, the constant threat of violence. It wore on her, on us. We fought constantly. She wanted out. Wanted to take Isabella and disappear somewhere I couldn't find them. Damien's hats clenched into fists. Then one night, she was driving home from her mother's house. Someone ran her off the road. By the time emergency services arrived, she was gone. They said it was an accident, weather conditions. But I knew. I knew the Romanos had sent a message, that they'd gotten to her because of me. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was my fault. I brought her into this world. I made her a target, and Isabella... His voice cracked. Isabella lost her mother because I couldn't keep my family safe. That's why I need to find Nico, why I need to end this war. I can't protect anyone if the Romanos are still out there. Lena understood then. This wasn't just about revenge or finding a lost brother. This was about a man trying to atone for every life his world had destroyed. Isabella loves you, Lena said quietly. She doesn't blame you for what happened to her mother. She should. But she doesn't. And maybe that means something. Maybe that means you're not the monster you think you are. Damien looked at her, really looked at her, and for a second the mask dropped completely. She saw the grief, the guilt, the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, he could fix what was broken. You should get some sleep, he said finally. Tomorrow's going to be hell. Yeah. Lena moved toward the door, then paused. Damien? For what it's worth, I'm glad Isabella has you. She could have a perfect father who kept her completely safe from the world, or she could have you, flawed and trying your best. And honestly, I think she's better off with you. She left before he could respond, but she heard him inhale sharply like she'd punched him. The next day arrived too fast. Lena woke to find the stylist already in her room, along with a makeup artist and someone whose job seemed to be exclusively managing the jewelry. They worked on her for 3 hours, hair pulled into an elegant twist, makeup that made her eyes look dangerous and her lips look like a weapon, diamonds at her throat that were probably worth more than her childhood home. When they finally let her see herself in the full-length mirror, Lena didn't recognize the woman staring back. She looked powerful, deadly, like someone who could walk into a room full of criminals and demand their respect. "Perfect," the stylist declared. "You look like a Romano queen." Lena touched the locket at her throat, the only piece of jewelry that actually mattered. Everything else was borrowed, rented, fake, but the locket was real. Her grandmother's. The symbol of a bloodline Lena had never wanted to claim. Isabella appeared in the doorway and gasped. "You look like a princess, like the ones in my books." "I look like I'm going to a funeral," Lena corrected. "Same thing sometimes." Isabella came closer, examining the dress with wide eyes. "Are you scared?" "Terrified. Daddy says being scared is okay. It means you care about what happens. Your dad is full of wisdom today. He's worried about you, I can tell." Isabella lowered her voice like sharing a secret. "He keeps checking his phone to make sure the security team is in place, and he made Marco go over the escape routes 12 times. He only does that when he's really worried." Lena knelt down, careful not to wrinkle the dress. "I'll be okay. I promise." "You can't promise that. Nobody can." The kid was right. But Lena hugged her anyway, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo and trying to memorize the feeling of something innocent and pure before she walked into hell. Damien appeared 30 minutes later, dressed in a tuxedo that probably cost more than a car. He looked like what he was, a billionaire who controlled empires and crushed anyone who stood in his way, the kind of man who made people nervous just by entering a room. But when he saw Lena, he stopped in his tracks. "You look..." He paused, searching for words. "Dangerous." "Is that a compliment? In this world?" "Yes." He moved closer, examining her the way Marco had taught her to read threats. "They'll believe you, Carlo's people. They'll see you and believe you're exactly who you claim to be." "Let's hope you're right." Marco entered with his security team, all of them dressed as waitstaff or guests, armed and ready. The plan was simple on paper. Arrive fashionably late, make an entrance that couldn't be ignored, use the Romano bloodline and the locket to demand an audience with Carlo, and then see what happened. In reality, about 1,000 things could go wrong. "Car's ready," Marco announced. "We should leave now if you want to arrive at 9. Lena took a breath and nodded. This was it. The moment that would either change everything or get her killed. No middle ground. Damien touched her elbow gently. "You remember the signals? If I touch my right ear, something's wrong. If I touch my left ear, I need an immediate extraction. If I take off the locket, everyone runs because something catastrophic is about to happen." "Good." His hand lingered on her arm. "Lena, if at any point you want to abort, if this feels too dangerous or you change your mind, we can extract you. No judgment, no consequences." "You'd really let me walk away? I'd rather have you alive and free than dead trying to help me." It was the most genuine thing he'd ever said to her. Lena squeezed his hand once, then let go. "Let's go crash a mafia party." The drive into Manhattan felt surreal. Lena watched the city lights blur past the window while Marco reviewed the plan one final time. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking, so she folded them in her lap and tried to remember everything she'd learned. Every name, every face, every phrase in Sicilian that might save her life. The gala was being held in a historic building in Midtown, the kind of place where presidents held fundraisers and billionaires got married. Tonight it was full of criminals pretending to be respectable members of society, drug dealers in tuxedos, human traffickers in designer gowns, all of them drinking expensive champagne and discussing business deals that would destroy lives. Lena's invitation, forged, obviously, got them past the first security checkpoint. The second checkpoint required a password that Damien's intelligence team had acquired through means Lena didn't want to know about. And then they were inside, walking through marble halls toward the main ballroom where hundreds of people were already gathered. "Remember," Marco whispered as they approached the entrance, "you belong here. You're Maria Romano's granddaughter. You have every right to be here. Believe it." Lena straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and tried to channel every ounce of courage she didn't actually possess. The doors opened. The ballroom was massive, chandeliers dripping crystal, a live orchestra playing something classical, people in formal wear clustering in groups that spoke to decades of alliances and grudges. Lena recognized faces from the photographs Marco had shown her. Salvatore Russo by the bar, laughing at something. Elena Marino holding court near the windows, surrounded by men who looked terrified of her. And at the center of it all, standing on a raised platform like a king surveying his kingdom, was Carlo Romano. He was shorter than Lena expected. Older, maybe 60, with silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He wore his power comfortably, like a man who'd never doubted his right to rule. When Lena entered the room, conversations didn't stop immediately, but they stuttered, faltered. People noticed her, noticed the dress, the confidence she was faking, the locket glinting at her throat. And then someone near the front gasped. "That's Maria's locket," a woman whispered, loud enough to carry. "I'd recognize it anywhere." The whisper spread like wildfire. Within seconds, the entire room had gone silent, everyone turning to stare at the stranger who'd walked in wearing a symbol that shouldn't exist. Carlo Romano's eyes locked onto Lena across the ballroom. His expression didn't change, but something flickered there. Recognition, calculation, threat assessment. Lena walked forward, her heels clicking on marble, every step taking her deeper into enemy territory. Marco stayed 3 paces behind, playing the role of her bodyguard. Damien had positioned himself near one of the exits, ready to move if things went wrong. She reached the platform where Carlo stood and looked up at him, at the man who'd ordered her death without ever meeting her. "My name is Lena Romano," she said in perfect Sicilian, pitching her voice to carry. "Granddaughter of Maria Romano, great-granddaughter of Giuseppe Romano, who founded this family. I've come to claim what's mine." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Carlo Romano smiled. And Lena knew with absolute certainty that she'd just walked into a trap. Carlo Romano's smile was the kind that made Lena's survival instincts scream. It was too wide, too comfortable, like he'd been expecting her, like she'd just delivered herself exactly where he wanted her. "Maria's granddaughter," he said in Sicilian, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "How remarkable. We thought Anna's daughters had no idea about their heritage, that they'd grown up ignorant, American." The way he said American made it sound like a disease. Lena kept her expression neutral, even though her heart was trying to break through her ribs. "My grandmother taught me what I needed to know before she died, including who my real family is." "Your real family." Carlo descended from the platform slowly, deliberately, like a predator circling prey. "And yet you show up here, at my gala, wearing my aunt's locket, claiming rights you have no understanding of. Tell me, Lena Romano, do you even know what that locket means? Or did you just think it was a pretty necklace?" The crowd was watching with the intensity of Romans at the Colosseum, waiting to see blood. Lena touched the locket, letting everyone see the gesture. "It means I'm the heir, direct bloodline from Giuseppe Romano through his daughter Maria. Which makes me—" She paused, letting the words sink in. "Which makes me your superior in the family hierarchy, by blood and by tradition." Someone in the crowd gasped. Someone else laughed nervously. Carlo's smile never wavered. "Bold words from a waitress," he said softly. "Yes, I know what you were. What you are. I've had people watching you since the moment you surfaced. You worked, at a restaurant in Manhattan. You send money to your diabetic sister in Boston. You have $1,300 in your bank account and maxed out credit cards. You're nobody." "I'm Maria Romano's granddaughter." "So you say." Carlo was close now, close enough that Lena could smell his cologne, something expensive and cloying. But anyone can walk into a room wearing a locket and making claims. Blood is easy to fake. Heritage is easy to fabricate, especially when someone like Damien Morelli is desperate enough to try anything. He said Damien's name loud enough for everyone to hear. Across the room, Lena saw heads turn toward where Damien stood near the exit. His face remained impassive, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. "This has nothing to do with the Morellis," Lena said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Doesn't it? You disappeared the same night the Morelli estate was attacked. You've been hiding at one of his safe houses for 2 weeks, And now you show up here making claims that would destabilize my leadership right when Damian Morelli is most vulnerable and desperate. Carlo's eyes were black and empty. You're a pawn, child. A pretty distraction he's using to divide us while he searches for something he'll never find. I'm not a pawn. You're nothing. Carlo's voice cracked like a whip, making several people flinch. Then he smiled again, the rage disappearing behind that pleasant mask. But I'm a reasonable man. I'm willing to give you a chance to prove your claim, to show everyone here that you're truly Maria's blood and not just some desperate girl Morelli bought off. This was it. The test Damian had warned her about. What kind of proof? Lena asked. Carlo gestured to an old woman sitting near the front, ancient, withered, her eyes sharp despite her age. This is Rosa Santini. She was Maria Romano's closest friend before Maria disappeared 60 years ago. If anyone can verify your identity, it's her. The old woman stood slowly, leaning on a cane, and shuffled toward Lena. The crowd parted for her like she was royalty. When she reached Lena, she stared up at her face with an intensity that made Lena want to look away. Let me see the locket, Rosa croaked. Lena unclasped it with shaking hands and gave it to her. Rosa examined it closely, turning it over, opening it to look at the symbol inside. Her hands trembled. This is Maria's, she whispered. I watched Giuseppe give it to her on her 18th birthday. I was there. She looked at Lena. But that doesn't mean you are who you claim. Maria could have given this to anyone, sold it, lost it. She gave it to her daughter Anna, my mother. And Anna gave it to me before she died. Anna Romano died 40 years ago. Anna Romano faked her death and lived as Anna Hart in Boston. She had 2 daughters, me and Maya. She died 6 years ago in a car accident. Lena's voice caught. And my grandmother raised us, taught us the old dialect, sang us songs from Sicily. She never forgot where she came from, even if she couldn't go back. Rosa's eyes filled with tears. Sing one of the songs. If Maria truly raised you, you'll know the lullabies she loved. This was the moment. Everything Damian had trained her for came down to this. A song her grandmother had sung 1,000 times when Lena couldn't sleep, when she was scared, when the world felt too big and harsh. Lena took a breath and began to sing. The Sicilian flowed out of her like water, the ancient dialect that barely anyone spoke anymore. The words talked about mountains and sea, about leaving home and always carrying it in your heart, about love that survived distance and time and death itself. By the second verse, Rosa was crying openly. By the third, several older people in the crowd had joined in, their voices cracking with age and memory. When Lena finished, the silence was different than before. Softer, uncertain. That's Maria's voice, Rosa whispered. The way you sing it, the phrasing, the inflection. That's exactly how Maria sang. You couldn't know that unless she taught you herself. My grandmother taught me, Lena said quietly. Before she died. She made me promise to remember where I came from. Rosa looked at Carlo, her expression defiant despite her frailty. This is Maria's granddaughter. I'd stake my life on it. Carlo's smile finally cracked. Just a little, just enough to show the calculation underneath. Well then, he said slowly. It appears we have a legitimate heir among us. How unexpected. He turned to address the crowd. Of course, bloodline alone doesn't guarantee leadership. Giuseppe Romano's original law was clear. The family is led by whoever is strongest, whoever can command respect and inspire loyalty, whoever can make the hard decisions that keep us powerful. He looked back at Lena. You have blood, but do you have strength? Have you ever killed a man? Run a criminal enterprise? Made decisions that cost lives but saved the family? Or are you just a waitress playing dress-up in clothes Damian Morelli bought you? Lena felt Marco's presence behind her, a reminder that she wasn't alone. Felt Damian watching from across the room. But this moment was hers. This answer had to come from her, not from the people protecting her. You're right, she said clearly. I've never killed anyone, never run a criminal organization. Until 2 weeks ago, I didn't even know this world existed, but I know what strength looks like. And it's not this, she gestured around the ballroom. Strength isn't throwing parties where you all pretend you're legitimate while children are trafficked and drugs destroy communities and people die so you can wear expensive watches. Strength is surviving when the world tries to break you. It's working 3 jobs to keep your sister alive. It's choosing to be kind when cruelty would be easier. It's weakness Carlo interrupted, his voice ice cold. Everything you just described is weakness. Kindness is what prey feels for other prey while the predators circle. You want to lecture us about morality? About choices? You walked into this room wearing that locket because you needed protection from the very world you're now condemning. You're a hypocrite and a fool. Maybe. Lena met his eyes. But I'm a fool with more claim to this family than you have. Giuseppe Romano's law says the strongest leads, but his original will, the one written before he died, says the bloodline heir inherits everything. And that's me. Not you. Which means legally, by the old laws you all pretend to respect, everything you control belongs to me. The reaction was immediate. People started talking, arguing, looking at each other with expressions ranging from shock to calculation to barely contained greed. Carlo's face went absolutely white with rage. You know nothing about our laws, he hissed. I know you've been lying about them for 5 years. I know Giuseppe's original will was sealed in a vault at the Banco di Sicilia in Palermo. And I know the combination to that vault was written inside this locket. Lena held it up. Along with documents proving the bloodline, my grandmother made sure I'd have everything I needed to claim what's mine. She was bluffing. She had no idea if there was anything in that vault. The old man, Damien's grandfather, had mentioned the locket held secrets, but Lena had never found anything except the symbol. But Carlo didn't know that. Nobody in this room knew that. Carlo's hand moved to his jacket, and Lena knew with crystalline certainty he was reaching for a gun. Marco shifted behind her. Across the room, Damien's entire security team tensed, ready to turn this ballroom into a war zone. But before Carlo could draw his weapon, the doors at the far end of the ballroom slammed open. Armed men poured in. Not Carlo's men, judging by the way he spun around in shock. These were younger, dressed in tactical gear, moving with military precision. They fanned out across the room, weapons raised, trapping everyone inside. And walking between them, looking like he'd stepped out of a nightmare, was a young man in his mid-20s. He had Damien's eyes, Damien's bone structure. But where Damien was cold and controlled, this man burned with barely contained violence. His face was scarred, his hands were scarred, and when he looked at the crowd, his expression held nothing but contempt. "Hello, brother," he said in perfect English, his gaze locking on Damien. "Did you miss me?" Lena's blood turned to ice as she recognized him from photographs Marco had shown her. Photos from 15 years ago of a 12-year-old boy smiling at a birthday party, innocent and whole. Nico Morelli. Damien had gone absolutely rigid, his face drained of all color. "Nico? That's not my name anymore." The young man's smile was sharp as broken glass. "The Romanos renamed me when they took me, raised me, trained me. I'm Matteo now, Matteo Romano, Carlo's adopted son and heir." The words hit like physical blows. Lena saw Damien actually stagger, grabbing the wall for support. This was worse than death, worse than anything they'd prepared for. Nico, Matteo, whoever he was now, walked further into the room. His men kept their weapons trained on the crowd, making it clear this wasn't a rescue. It was a takeover. "You've been looking for me," he said to Damien, his voice mocking. "Spending millions, destroying businesses, all to find your poor lost brother who was kidnapped by the evil Romanos." He laughed, and it was a horrible sound. "But I wasn't kidnapped. I was saved. Saved from a family that cared more about money and power than they did about a 12-year-old kid. The Romanos gave me a home, a purpose. They made me strong. They brainwashed you," Damien said, his voice breaking. "Nico, whatever they told you, stop calling me that!" The young man's composure cracked, showing the rage underneath. Nico was weak, scared, pathetic. He died the night your family failed to protect him. I'm what rose from his ashes. Carlo was watching this unfold with an expression of smug satisfaction. "Matteo is my greatest achievement, the perfect weapon, raised to hate the Morellis with every fiber of his being, and tonight he's going to do what I've wanted for 15 years. Matteo pulled out a gun and pointed it directly at Damien's chest. "He's going to kill you," Carlo finished. "And then he's going to help me deal with this pretender girl and her ridiculous claims. The Romano family will be secure. The Morellis will be destroyed. And I'll finally have the peace I deserve." Lena's mind was racing. This wasn't the plan. Nothing about this was the plan. Damien was supposed to find Nico. Save him. Bring him home. not watch him pull a trigger while a room full of criminals applauded. She looked at Damien and saw something she'd never seen before. Defeat. Total, crushing defeat. He wasn't even trying to defend himself. He just stared at his brother with an expression of such profound grief that Lena felt her heart crack. "Do it," Damien said quietly. "If you really hate me that much, then do it." Mateo's hand tightened on the gun. His finger moved to the trigger. And Lena did the only thing she could think of. She started to sing. The same lullaby from before, but different now. Softer. More personal. The one her grandmother had said she sang to Lena's mother when she was a baby. The one that talked about protecting children and keeping them safe and loving them even when the world was dark and terrible. Mateo's hand wavered. "What are you doing?" Carlo demanded. "Shoot him, now!" But Mateo was staring at Lena now, his expression confused, lost. "My grandmother sang this to my mother," Lena said, still in Sicilian. "And my mother sang it to me. And your mother—" She looked at Damien. "What was her name?" "Elena." Damien's voice was barely audible. "Elena Morelli." Elena Morelli sang this to her sons. Lena took a step toward Mateo, ignoring the weapons trained on her. "She sang it to you, Nico. When you were scared, when you couldn't sleep. She held you and sang this exact song." "Stop." Mateo's voice shook. "Stop talking. Your mother loved you, your brother loved you. They never stopped looking for you, never stopped hoping you were alive." "They let me be taken." The words exploded out of him, raw and desperate. "I was 12 and they let those men take me. They tried to save you." Damien stepped forward despite the guns. "Nico, our father died trying to get you back. He went to Sicily alone to negotiate with the Romanos, and they killed him. Our mother spent 2 years searching before her heart gave out from grief. I've spent 15 years destroying myself trying to find you. We didn't let you be taken. We couldn't get you back." Tears were streaming down Mateo's face now, his hand shaking so badly the gun was wavering all over the place. "You're lying," he whispered. "Carlo said—" "Carlo is a liar," Lena said gently. "He took a scared 12-year-old boy and filled his head with poison. Turned you into a weapon against your own family. But deep down, Nico is still there. I can see him in your eyes." "Enough of this," Carlo roared. He grabbed the gun from Mateo's hand and pointed it at Lena himself. "You want to save the Morelli family? Fine, die for them." He pulled the trigger. The shot echoed like thunder. But Lena didn't fall. Mateo had moved faster than thought, shoving her aside. The bullet meant for her chest hit him in the shoulder instead, spinning him around. He crashed into Lena, and they both went down in a tangle of velvet and blood. Chaos erupted. Marco and his team opened fire on Carlo's guards. Guests screamed and dove for cover. Damien was running toward them, his face a mask of terror. Lena scrambled to her knees, pressing her hands against Mateo's shoulder where blood was pumping out in rhythm with his heartbeat. "Stay with me," she gasped. "Stay with me." Mateo looked up at her with eyes that suddenly looked very young, very lost. "I remember," he whispered. "I remember her singing. I remember—" He started crying in earnest. "I remember everything." Damien reached them and dropped to his knees, his hands joining Lena's in trying to stop the bleeding. Nico, I've got you. You're going to be okay. I shot at you." Nico's voice was destroyed. "I was going to kill you." "I don't care. I don't care." Damien was crying too now, this cold billionaire who never showed emotion, tears running down his face. "You're my brother. Nothing else matters." Gunfire was still raging around them. Lena looked up and saw Carlo trying to escape through a side door, saw Marco tackling him to the ground, saw blood and broken glass, and people fighting like the civilized masks had finally shattered completely. "We need to get him out of here," Lena yelled over the noise. "He needs a hospital." "The cars are out front," Damien said. He scooped Nico into his arms like he weighed nothing, despite his own injuries, and started moving toward the exit. Lena and Marco covered them, weapons drawn. When had Marco given her a gun as they fought through the chaos? They burst out into the night air and piled into the waiting SUV. The driver floored it before the doors were even closed, tires screaming as they peeled away from the curb. Inside the vehicle, Damien held his brother and rocked him like a child, pressing cloth against the wound, whispering in Italian. Nico was conscious but fading, his eyes unfocused. "Stay awake," Damien commanded. "Nico, look at me. Stay awake." "Tired," Nico mumbled. "So tired." I know you are. But you have to stay with me. You have to." His voice broke. "Please, I just got you back. Please don't leave me again." Lena's phone was ringing. She answered it without looking, her hands covered in Nico's blood. "Ms. Hart?" An unfamiliar voice. "This is Agent Patterson with the FBI. We have the building surrounded. Carlo Romano and 15 of his top associates are in custody. We'd like to ask you some questions about—" "Later," Lena said. "We have a gunshot victim who needs immediate medical attention. We have ambulances standing by. Where are you?" She gave their location. The agent told her to stay on the line. EMTs would intercept them within 5 minutes. True to his word, they met an ambulance 4 minutes later. Paramedics swarmed the SUV, loading Nico onto a stretcher, starting IVs, rattling off medical terms Lena didn't understand. Damien tried to climb into the ambulance with them. "Family only," one of the paramedics said. "That's my brother." "Sir, there's not enough room." "That is my brother, and I've been searching for him for 15 years. I'm not leaving him." Something in Damien's voice made the paramedics step aside. Damien climbed in and the ambulance doors closed, sirens wailing as they sped toward the nearest hospital. Lena stood on the street covered in blood, wearing a designer dress that was ruined, and tried to process what had just happened. They'd gone to the gala to infiltrate the Romano family, to find Nico, to somehow end the war. Instead, they'd started a firefight, gotten Nico shot, and apparently the FBI had been involved the whole time. Marco appeared beside her, also covered in blood, a cut on his forehead that needed stitches. "You okay?" he asked. "I have no idea," Lena said honestly. "Is this real? Did that actually just happen?" "Unfortunately, yes." Marco gestured to the arriving police cars and FBI vehicles. "We need to get you somewhere safe before they start asking questions we can't answer." "What about Carlo?" "In custody, along with most of his top people. Turns out Damien's been working with the FBI for 6 months, feeding them information about Romano operations. Tonight was supposed to be a massive sting operation. Your appearance just accelerated the timeline." Lena's head spun. "He didn't tell me that." "He didn't tell anyone. Too dangerous if it leaked." Marco took her arm gently. "Come on, we need to go." But before they could move, a black sedan pulled up and a woman in her 50s stepped out. She had the look of someone who'd spent decades not taking anyone's nonsense. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, an FBI badge clipped to her belt. "Ms. Hart," she said, "I'm Agent Sarah Patterson. We spoke on the phone. I need you to come with me." "Am I under arrest?" "Not yet, but we have a lot to discuss, including your claim to be a Romano heir, your relationship with Damien Morelli, and what exactly happened in that ballroom tonight." Lena looked at Marco, who nodded slightly. "No choice." "Okay," she said, "but I want a lawyer." "Smart girl." Agent Patterson opened the car door. "Let's go." The interrogation lasted 6 hours. They went through everything: how Lena had met Damien, the attack on the estate, the 2 weeks of preparation, her bloodline claim, the confrontation with Carlo, Nico's appearance, the shooting. Agent Patterson asked the same questions 17 different ways, looking for inconsistencies, trying to find evidence that Lena was complicit in criminal activity. But the truth was simple. Lena was a waitress who'd stumbled into a war she didn't understand. She hadn't committed any crimes, hadn't profited from the Romano Empire, hadn't known about Damien's FBI cooperation. She was just a girl trying to survive. Finally, around dawn, Agent Patterson closed her notebook. "You're free to go," she said. "For now, but stay in the city. We'll probably have more questions." "What about Damien? Nico?" "Damien Morelli has been very cooperative with our investigation into the Romano family. As far as we're concerned, he's a witness, not a suspect. His brother is in surgery but expected to survive. You can visit them at Mount Sinai if you want." Lena wanted to ask more questions, but exhaustion was pulling at her like weights. She'd been awake for over 40 hours, had nearly died multiple times, and her brain felt like static. Marco was waiting outside the FBI building with a car. He drove her to Mount Sinai without a word, understanding that she was too tired for conversation. The hospital was chaos, News crews camped outside, police standing guard, people coming and going with frantic energy. Marco got her through a side entrance and up to the surgical floor where Damien was pacing outside a recovery room like a caged animal. When he saw Lena, something in his expression cracked. "He's alive," Damien said, his voice hoarse. "They got the bullet out. He's going to be okay." "That's good." Lena didn't know what else to say. "That's really good." "The doctors said—" Damien stopped, swallowed hard. "They said he's been systematically tortured for years, brainwashed. He has scars all over his body from what they did to him. They turned him into—" He couldn't finish. Lena stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. Damien went rigid for a second, then collapsed against her, his face buried in her shoulder, his whole body shaking with sobs he'd probably been holding back for 15 years. They stood like that for a long time, while hospital sounds echoed around them, and the sun rose outside the windows, painting everything in shades of gold and pink that felt too beautiful for the night they'd survived. Eventually, Damien pulled back, wiping his eyes roughly. "I'm sorry," he said. "I shouldn't— You just found your brother after 15 years. You're allowed to cry." He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. "Can I see him?" Lena asked. Damien led her into the recovery room. Nico lay in the bed, unconscious from sedation, hooked up to machines that beeped softly. Without the rage and violence, he looked impossibly young. Just a kid who'd been hurt too much for too long. "What happens now?" Lena asked quietly. "Now he heals, or tries to. The FBI wants him to testify against Carlo, but I'm not putting him through that until he's ready. He's been through enough." Damien touched his brother's hand carefully. "I have therapists on standby, doctors, whatever he needs, for as long as he needs it." "And the Romano family?" "Destroyed. Carlo's arrested. Elena's arrested. Most of the top leadership is either in custody or dead from the firefight. The ones who survived are turning on each other, trying to make deals with the FBI. The empire is collapsing." Which meant Lena was safe. No more bounty on her head. No more running. No more war. "I can go home," she said, the realization hitting her. "I can go back to Boston, see Maya. Go back to my normal life." Damien looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw real vulnerability in his face. "Is that what you want?" Lena opened her mouth to say yes. Of course yes. She'd never wanted this life. Never wanted the violence and fear and constant threat of death. She wanted her tiny apartment and her minimum wage job and the simple struggle of making rent. But when she tried to picture it, going back to being invisible, to serving food to people who didn't see her, to living small and safe and alone, something in her chest ached. "I don't know," she admitted. "A month ago, I would have said yes without hesitation, but now—" She looked at Nico sleeping in the hospital bed, at Damien standing guard over his broken brother. "Now I don't know who I am anymore." "You're Lena Hart," Damien said softly. "The woman who walked into a room full of killers and faced down the most dangerous man in New York. The woman who saved my brother's life, and maybe his soul. The woman who—" He stopped, started again. "The woman who taught me that cold and ruthless isn't the same as strong, that kindness isn't weakness, that maybe, after 15 years of hunting and hating and destroying, there's still something worth living for." Lena's throat closed. "Damien, I'm not asking you to stay," he said quickly. "You've done everything I asked and more. You're free. Free to go back to Boston, to your sister, to whatever life you want to build. I'll make sure you have money, resources, whatever you need to start over. But if you wanted to stay," he met her eyes, "if you wanted to be part of this, part of rebuilding what my family destroyed, part of helping Nico heal, part of my life and Isabella's life, that option exists too." It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't even really romantic. It was just an honest offer from a man who'd spent 15 years being alone and was finally admitting he didn't want to be anymore. Lena thought about Maya, safe in Boston with money in her bank account and no more collection notices. Thought about Isabella asking her to stay. Thought about Nico, who'd need people who understood what it meant to be broken and still keep fighting. Thought about herself and who she might become if she stopped trying to survive and started trying to live. "I need to go see my sister first," she said finally. "Make sure she's okay, that she understands what happened, and then—" She took a breath. Then maybe we can figure out what staying means. What any of this means. Damien's expression flooded with relief and hope, and something that might have been the beginning of happiness. That's enough, he said. That's more than enough. Through the window, the sun continued to rise over Manhattan, and for the first time in weeks, Lena let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she might actually get to see tomorrow. 3 months later, Lena stood in her old apartment in Boston and barely recognized it. Maya had cleaned, obviously. The place smelled like lemon cleaner instead of old takeout, and the dishes were actually done. But it felt smaller than Lena remembered. Darker, like she'd outgrown it somehow in the weeks she'd been gone. You look different, Maya said from the doorway, watching her sister with careful eyes. Not bad different, just different. I feel different. Lena set down her bag, designer now, bought with money Damien had transferred to her account despite her protests. Like I left here as one person and came back as someone else. Are you okay with that? Lena thought about it. Really thought about it. A month ago, she would have said no, would have mourned the loss of the quiet waitress who just wanted to survive and keep her sister safe. But that woman had been so small, so scared, so convinced that asking for more than survival was greedy. Yeah, she said finally. I think I am. They'd spent the first hour catching up properly. Not the careful phone calls they'd been having, but real conversation. Maya talked about school, about her new job at a better pharmacy with actual benefits, about the clinical trial for a new insulin pump that might change her life. Lena talked about everything. The truth, finally. All of it. Maya had listened with eyes getting wider and wider until Lena finished with Nico getting shot and the FBI arrests and Damien's offer. So you're a mafia princess, Maya said flatly. Technically a crime family heir, but the family's mostly destroyed now, so… Lena, you're a mafia princess. I'm really not. I'm just… And you're dating a billionaire. I'm not dating him. It's complicated. Maya laughed, sharp and a little hysterical. My sister went to work one night and came back a month later having destroyed a criminal empire and maybe dating a billionaire. This is insane. This is actually insane. I know. And you're thinking about staying in New York with him and his traumatized brother and his daughter? I don't know. Maybe. Lena sat on the couch that sagged in the middle, the one they'd gotten from Goodwill 6 years ago. I know it sounds crazy, but Maya, for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm doing something that matters. Not just surviving, actually making a difference. You made a difference here. You raised me, kept me alive. I know, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. But you're okay now. You have the scholarship, the job, the new treatment options. You don't need me hovering over you anymore. Maya's expression softened. I'll always need you. You're my sister. But yeah, I get it. You can't spend the rest of your life being my parent. You need to be you. I don't even know who that is anymore. Then maybe it's time to find out. Maya reached over and squeezed her hand. Go back to New York. Help the broken billionaire and his traumatized brother and his kid who needs a mom. See what happens. Just promise you'll call me and visit. And if he hurts you, I'll figure out how to destroy a shipping empire from Boston. Lena laughed through the tears that were suddenly burning her eyes. Deal. She stayed in Boston for a week, helping Maya settle into her new routine, meeting her sister's friends, pretending for a few days that she could still fit into this old life. But every night, her phone would buzz with messages from New York. Isabella sending photos of drawings she'd made. Marco updating her on Nico's progress. Damien sending brief texts that said things like, Nico asked about you today, or Isabella wants to know when you're coming back. Never pressure, never demands. Just reminders that she had people waiting for her. On the 7th day, Lena packed her bag and took the train back to Manhattan. Marco picked her up at Penn Station, his usual stoic expression cracking into something almost like a smile when he saw her. Welcome back, he said, taking her bag. I haven't decided if I'm staying yet, Lena warned. Sure you haven't. He opened the car door. Mr. Morelli wanted me to take you to the hospital first. Nico's having a good day, and asked if you could visit. Lena's chest tightened. She'd been getting updates about Nico's recovery, the physical therapy for his shoulder, the psychiatric treatment for the years of trauma and brainwashing, the slow, painful process of remembering who he'd been before the Romanos took him. Some days were better than others. Some days he didn't want to see anyone, Didn't want to be touched. Couldn't stand to be in a room with Damien because the guilt was too crushing. But today was apparently a good day. They found him in a private recovery suite that looked more like a hotel room than a hospital. Damien had made sure he had the best care money could buy: private nurses, top psychiatrists, a room with windows overlooking Central Park. Nico sat in a chair by the window, his arms still in a sling, looking out at the trees turning gold and red with autumn. He was thinner than he'd been at the gala. The rage had burned out of him, leaving behind something fragile and uncertain. When he heard Lena enter, he turned and tried to smile. "Hey," he said. His voice was different now, softer, less like a weapon. "Hey yourself." Lena sat in the chair across from him. "Marco said you wanted to see me." "Yeah, I wanted to—" He stopped, searching for words. "I wanted to apologize for pointing a gun at you, for almost killing my brother, for being—" "You were brainwashed," Lena interrupted gently. "You spent 15 years being told lies about your family. That's not your fault." "Feels like my fault." Nico's hands clenched in his lap. "I remember things now, from before. Birthday parties. My mom singing. Damien teaching me to ride a bike. And I remember hating them. Being trained to hate them. I can't reconcile the two versions in my head. Maybe you don't have to reconcile them. Maybe you just have to accept that both versions existed, and now you get to choose who you want to be going forward." Nico looked at her with eyes that were too old for 27. "Damien talks about you like you're some kind of miracle, like you saved all of us." "I didn't save anyone. I was just trying not to die." That's what courage looks like, though. Trying not to die when dying would be easier. He leaned back in his chair. "My therapist says I need to build new relationships. Connections with people who aren't trying to use me or manipulate me. People who see me as human instead of a weapon." "That sounds healthy. It's terrifying." He smiled slightly. "But I was wondering, if you end up staying in New York, if maybe we could be friends, or try to be. I know that's asking a lot considering I nearly killed you, but yes," Lena said without hesitation. "We can be friends." Nico's relief was visible. "Really? Really? But fair warning, I'm terrible at friendship. I spent the last 6 years being too busy surviving to maintain relationships, so we'll probably both be bad at this." "I can live with that." They talked for another hour about nothing important: books, movies, the terrible hospital food that Nico complained about, even though Damien was having meals brought in from the best restaurants in the city. Easy conversation that felt like the beginning of something tentative and real. When Lena finally left, Damien was waiting in the hallway. He looked exhausted. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his suit was rumpled like he'd slept in it. He probably had. He'd been practically living at the hospital since Nico's surgery, only leaving when Marco physically forced him to go home and shower. "You came back," he said, like he hadn't quite believed she would. "I came back. How's Maya?" "Good. Better than good, actually. She got into a clinical trial for a new insulin delivery system. Could change her whole life." "That's good. I'm glad." Damien shoved his hands in his pockets. "I wasn't sure if you'd want to see me after everything." "Why wouldn't I?" "Because I used you, put you in danger, nearly got you killed multiple times, destroyed your normal life." He looked at the floor. "You'd be justified in hating me." Lena thought about the scared waitress she'd been a month ago. The woman who thought her entire world consisted of rent payments and insulin costs and tips that never quite covered everything. That woman would have hated him, would have blamed him for the chaos and violence and fear, but that woman had been so small, so convinced that survival was the best she deserved. "I don't hate you," Lena said. "I'm not sure what I feel, honestly. This has all been a lot, but hate isn't it." Damien finally met her eyes. "I meant what I said at the hospital, about you staying, about being part of this. But I need you to know that staying doesn't come with obligations. You don't owe me anything, not romance, not loyalty, not even friendship. You can just exist here, build whatever life you want. I'll help however I can, but I won't ask for more than you want to give." It was the most vulnerable thing he'd ever said to her. This man who controlled billions of dollars and commanded respect through fear was standing in a hospital hallway offering her freedom with no strings attached. "What do you want?" Lena asked quietly. "Not what you think is fair or reasonable. What do you actually want? Damien was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. I want you to stay. I want Isabella to keep looking at you like you hung the moon. I want Nico to have someone besides me to trust while he's healing. I want to... He stopped, started again. I want to take you to dinner. Real dinner, not a business transaction. I want to know what makes you laugh, what you dream about, who you are when you're not running for your life. I want me, Lena finished. You want me? Yes, but I'll settle for whatever pieces you're willing to give. Lena stepped closer to him, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his gray eyes, close enough to feel the warmth radiating off him. I'm not ready for romance, she said honestly. I'm still figuring out who I am now, what I want, where I fit in this new version of my life. But I like Isabella. I care about Nico. And you, she reached up and touched his face gently. You're complicated and damaged, and sometimes you're an arrogant jerk, but you're also the first person who ever made me feel like I could be more than just someone who survives. So yeah, I'll stay. We'll figure out the rest as we go. Damien closed his eyes like she'd just given him something precious. That's enough. That's more than I deserve. Probably, but we're both learning to take more than we deserve, I think. He caught her hand and held it against his face for a moment before letting go. Isabella's at home with Rosa. She's been asking about you constantly. Fair warning, she's planned an entire welcome back party complete with cake and balloons. She didn't have to do that. Try telling her that. She's 8 and stubborn and convinced you're the best thing that's happened to us. Damien smiled slightly. She's not wrong. They drove back to the estate together, not the one that had burned, but a new property Damien had purchased in Westchester. Smaller than the original, but still massive by normal standards. The security was better, Marco had assured her. More cameras, better trained guards, multiple escape routes. Lena was learning that this was just how wealthy people lived when they had enemies. Always watching, always prepared, always assuming the next attack was coming. Isabella met them at the door and launched herself at Lena with enough force to nearly knock her over. You came back, the girl shrieked. I told Daddy you would, but he was worried and I knew you wouldn't leave us, and I made you a cake, but I had to have help because I'm not allowed to use the oven alone, but I did all the decorating myself and... Breathe, Lena laughed, hugging her back. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? Lena looked at Damien over Isabella's head. He was watching them with an expression that made her chest ache, hope and fear and desperate longing all tangled together. I promise, Lena said. For now, at least. We'll take it one day at a time. That's good enough. Isabella grabbed her hand. Come see the cake. It has your name on it and everything. The cake was lopsided and covered in too much frosting, with Welcome Back Lena spelled out in wobbly letters. It was the most beautiful thing Lena had ever seen. They had cake for dinner because Isabella insisted and Damien was too emotionally exhausted to argue. They ate in the kitchen instead of the formal dining room, just the three of them, and Lena realized this was what family felt like. Not perfect, not without complications, but real. Present. Trying. After Isabella went to bed, Lena found herself in the study with Damien, both of them nursing whiskey and staring at paperwork neither of them wanted to deal with. The FBI wants me to testify, Lena said, breaking the comfortable silence. About what happened at the gala, what Carlos said, what I saw. Will you? I don't know. Part of me wants to make sure he pays for everything he did, but part of me just wants to be done with all of it. Move forward, stop looking back. Damien nodded slowly. The desire to forget is strong, but sometimes testifying is how we move forward, how we make sure the past actually stays in the past. Is that what you're doing? Testifying? Already did. Spent 3 days going through every piece of evidence I'd gathered on the Romano operations. Every deal, every shipment, every murder I could prove. They have enough to put Carlo away for multiple lifetimes. He swirled the whiskey in his glass. It won't bring back the people he killed. Won't undo the damage. But it's something. What about the Morelli businesses? Your shipping empire? Legitimate now. Completely legitimate. I spent the last 3 months scrubbing every illegal operation, every questionable deal, every shadow practice my father and grandfather built the empire on. Lost about 40% of my net worth in the process. Lena stared at him. You gave up 40% of your wealth? I gave up 40% of my dirty money. What's left is clean, earned honestly. It's less, but he met her eyes. I spent 15 years becoming the kind of person who could fight monsters. Somewhere along the way, I became one too. I don't want to be that anymore. I don't want Isabella growing up thinking ruthlessness is strength, or Nico learning that the only way to survive is to hurt people first. That's actually really brave. It's terrifying. I don't know how to be legitimate, how to compete fairly, how to build something without fear and threats and power plays. He smiled slightly. I'm learning, though, slowly. Lena thought about her own transformation, from waitress to heir to whatever she was now, still figuring it out, still learning who she could be when survival wasn't the only goal. I want to do something, she said suddenly, with my claim to the Romano estate. The properties and businesses that technically belong to me now that Carlo's arrested and the family's collapsed. What did you have in mind? Rehabilitation centers for people escaping trafficking, for kids who got caught up in gang violence, for anyone who needs a second chance. Lena leaned forward. The Romano family destroyed so many lives. I want to use their money, my money, I guess, to help rebuild some of what they broke. Damien's expression shifted into something that might have been respect, or admiration, or love. Yes, that's perfect. I can help. I have lawyers who can navigate the legal complexities, accountants who can structure it properly. Whatever you need. I need to learn how to run an organization, how to manage people and money and projects. I can't just throw money at problems and hope they fix themselves. No, you can't. But you can learn. I'll teach you, or we'll find people who can. He set down his glass. Lena, you're talking about building an empire, a different kind of empire than what our families built, but an empire nonetheless. That takes time, commitment, years of work. I know. And you're willing to do that? To stay here and learn and build instead of going back to your old life? Lena thought about the apartment in Boston, the restaurant job she'd never officially quit, the small, safe life she'd planned to live until she died. My old life died the night I walked up to your table, she said. I've been mourning it for weeks. But maybe that's okay. Maybe I was always meant for something bigger than just surviving. Maybe we both were. Damien stood and crossed to her chair. He knelt down so they were eye level, his hands resting lightly on the armrests on either side of her. I don't know how to do this, he said quietly. How to be someone worthy of you. How to build something healthy instead of just functional. How to be a good father and brother, and whatever I am to you, but I want to learn, if you'll let me. Lena reached out and touched his face, feeling the roughness of stubble, the warmth of skin, the realness of this moment. We'll learn together, she said, and we'll probably screw up a lot, but that's okay. We're both starting from scratch anyway. He leaned forward and kissed her. It was gentle and tentative and nothing like the romance novels Lena had read as a teenager. It was just two damaged people reaching for each other in the darkness, hoping they could find light together. When they pulled apart, Damien rested his forehead against hers. Thank you, he whispered, for staying, for giving us a chance, for being brave enough to build something new instead of running back to what was safe. Thank you for seeing me, Lena whispered back, for making me feel like I could be more than invisible. They sat like that for a long time, holding each other in the quiet study while the rest of the house slept, and Lena felt something settle in her chest. Not happiness exactly, not yet, but possibility, hope, the sense that maybe, just maybe, she'd finally found where she belonged. The next 6 months were hard in ways Lena hadn't expected. Learning to run charitable organizations meant endless meetings, legal documents she barely understood, confrontations with people who thought she was too young or too inexperienced or too female to know what she was doing. She made mistakes, hired the wrong people, trusted the wrong advice, had to fire someone for the first time and cried about it for 3 days. But she also succeeded, opened the first rehabilitation center in Queens, helped 17 women escape trafficking situations, partnered with schools to create intervention programs for at-risk kids, started seeing real, measurable impact from the work she was doing. Nico's recovery was slower. Some days he was the brother Damien remembered, Funny, thoughtful, quick with a sarcastic comment. Other days he couldn't get out of bed, couldn't stop seeing the faces of people he'd hurt during his years with the Romanos, couldn't forgive himself for nearly killing his own family. His therapist said it would take years, maybe decades. That the kind of trauma and brainwashing Nico had endured didn't just heal with time and good intentions. But he was trying. That counted for something. Isabella started therapy too, for the trauma of the attack on the estate, for losing her great-grandfather, for the complicated feelings of watching her father fall in love while still missing her mother. She was 8 and shouldn't have to deal with any of it, but she was, with a resilience that made Lena ache. "Do you think Mommy would like you?" Isabella asked one night while Lena was tucking her in. The question caught Lena off guard. They didn't talk about Sophie much. Damien kept a photo of her in Isabella's room, but rarely mentioned her, like saying her name might break something. "I don't know," Lena said honestly. "I hope so. But it's okay if she wouldn't. I'm not trying to replace her. I know, you're different." Isabella played with her stuffed rabbit's ear. "Mommy was soft, gentle. You're harder, like Daddy, but in a good way, like you've both been through bad stuff and came out stronger. Is that okay, that I'm different?" "Yeah." Isabella smiled sleepily. "I liked Mommy's soft, but I need someone who understands Daddy's hard, someone who won't break when things get scary." Lena kissed her forehead. "I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart, even when things get scary." "Promise?" "Promise." By the 1-year anniversary of the night Lena had walked up to Damien's table, everything had changed, and nothing had changed. She still woke up some mornings not quite believing this was her life. Still felt like an imposter in designer clothes and boardroom meetings. Still missed the simplicity of just worrying about rent and tips. But she also felt alive in ways she never had before. Purposeful. Like she was building something that mattered instead of just existing in the spaces between other people's lives. They held a small dinner at the estate to mark the anniversary. Not a celebration exactly, but an acknowledgement. Marco was there, his face still bearing a scar from the gala firefight. Nico attended his first social event in months, quiet but present. Isabella made another lopsided cake. After dinner, Damien pulled Lena out to the gardens. It was early October, cool enough to need a jacket, the stars visible despite the light pollution from the city. "I got you something," he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Lena's heart lurched. "Damien, it's not what you think. I know we're not ready for that." He opened the box to reveal a key, just a simple silver key on a chain. "It's to the estate, your own key, so you know this is your home. Not just a place you're staying, your home." Lena's eyes burned with tears. A year ago, she'd been terrified of having nowhere to go. No safety, no stability. And now this man was offering her a key to his home, his life, his future. "Thank you," she whispered, taking the key. "There's something else." Damien took a breath. "The old man, my grandfather, he left a will. Most of his estate went to Nico and Isabella, but there was a provision for Maria Romano's heir, if one ever appeared." "I don't want his money, Damien. We talked about this. It's not money. It's letters. Dozens of them. Letters he wrote to Maria over 60 years but never sent. Love letters, apologies, dreams about the life they could have had if their families hadn't been at war." Damien pulled an envelope from his other pocket. "He wanted you to have them, wanted you to know that your grandmother was loved, that she never forgot him either." Lena took the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were dozens of aged letters, the paper yellowed and fragile, filled with handwriting she'd never seen but somehow recognized. "He loved her his whole life," Damien said quietly. "Never married anyone else, never moved on. Just spent 60 years building an empire and wishing he'd been brave enough to choose love over duty." He looked at Lena. "I don't want to make that mistake. I don't want to wake up in 60 years and realize I let the best thing in my life slip away because I was too scared or too damaged or too convinced I didn't deserve happiness." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I love you. I'm saying I want to build a life with you. Not someday. Not when we're both less broken. Now. Messy and complicated and imperfect as we both are." He took her hands. "I'm saying I want to choose love over duty. Choose building over destroying. Choose you over everything else." Lena's tears were falling freely now, running down her face, and dripping onto their joined hands. "I love you too," she said through the tears. "I've been so scared to say it because I didn't think we deserved. But yes, I love you." Damien pulled her close and kissed her like she was oxygen, and he'd been drowning for 15 years. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he smiled. Actually smiled. The first real unguarded smile she'd ever seen from him. "So we're doing this?" he asked. "We're actually choosing each other?" "Yeah, we are. It's going to be hard. We're both disasters." "I know. And people will judge, say you're with me for money, say I'm with you because I'm trying to replace Sophie. Let them talk. And we'll fight. Have days where we can't stand each other, make mistakes, hurt each other without meaning to. Probably," Lena touched his face gently, "but we'll also have days like this, where we choose each other despite everything. Where we build something new instead of mourning what we lost. Where we're brave enough to believe we deserve more than just survival." Damien kissed her forehead. "When did you get so wise?" "Since I stopped being invisible and started being seen." They walked back to the house hand in hand, ready to tell Isabella and Nico that they were officially together, ready to face whatever judgments and challenges came their way, ready to build something real. Inside, Isabella was showing Nico her latest drawing, a family portrait that included all four of them plus the stuffed rabbit. The kid had drawn them standing in front of the estate, holding hands, all of them smiling. "Is this what you want?" Nico asked, showing the drawing to Damien and Lena. "All of us together?" "Yeah," Isabella said firmly. "This is exactly what I want." Damien looked at Lena looked at Nico. And slowly, tentatively, they all smiled. Because this was it. This was what healing looked like. Not perfect, not without scars, but whole in a way none of them had been a year ago. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Lena sat alone in her room and read her great-grandfather's letters to her grandmother. 60 years of love captured in fading ink. Dreams that had never come true. Regrets that had shaped an entire family's destiny. The last letter was different from the others. It was addressed to whoever inherited the locket. To Maria's heir. "If you're reading this," it said, "then you've claimed the family heritage. You've walked into the war that destroyed my life and Maria's. I hope you were braver than I was. I hope you chose love over duty, family over power, healing over revenge. I hope you learned from our mistakes instead of repeating them. And I hope you and yours find the peace Maria and I never could. The life we dreamed about but were too afraid to fight for. Don't make our mistakes. Don't let fear win. Choose love. Always choose love." Lena folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the envelope with the others. Then she took out her phone and texted Maya. "I'm staying in New York, building something new, building something good. I hope you understand." Maya's response came immediately. "Of course I understand. You're not just surviving anymore. You're living. I'm proud of you, sis." Lena looked around her room. At the comfortable bed, the closet full of clothes that actually fit, the windows overlooking gardens she could walk through without fear. This was her home now. This family, broken and healing and trying, was hers. She'd walked into a restaurant a year ago with nothing except debt and desperation. She'd approached a dangerous man's table and accidentally set off a chain of events that had destroyed criminal empires and reunited lost brothers and given her a purpose she'd never imagined. And now she was here. Not a waitress, not a survivor, not invisible. Just Lena. Building a life worth living. Choosing love over fear. Becoming someone who deserved the light instead of hiding in the shadows. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was hers. And that was more than enough.